Chapter 4459. Half a month ago, her uncle's illegitimate son, Chin had asked her to do something for him, seeing that he was an honest and peaceful person, and that what he asked for was not evil. She sent someone to do it for him. Afterwards, he was very grateful and returned the favor. When she heard about it, it took her a while to calm herself down. I didn't pay much attention to it at that time. I just took a casual look. He was wearing camouflage, and half of his face was covered in blood. Feel free to ask, and your nephew can guarantee that every word is true. There is not a single lie. Only then did she know that her daughter was not afraid of marriage, but that she had someone in her heart. Why would she hide it from her mother? Since she had hidden it from her mother, it was obvious that the person in Chin Ying's heart was not a suitable son-in-law for her. If Chin Ying dared to mention it, she would definitely be furious. After Chin Yi finished speaking, Chin Ying's mother felt a chill run up her spine. She even caught a cold. She was completely frightened by Chin Yi's words and her own careful thinking. Other than returning to the southern province to celebrate the birthday of her grandfather, another important thing was to find out who Chin Ying liked. She did not want to come home for several years and did not want to interact with other men. Camouflage, half of his face covered in blood. The more she thought about it, the more anxious she became. She still did not know what to do in the past half a month. Her daughter was harder to control than her son. How could she find out when she was not in love with her son? Chin Ying's mother's eyes were dark and her heart was cold. She had to ask even if she could not find out. She would not allow a boy from a remote place to cheat Chin Ying. Putting all these things aside, Chin Ying's mother was a mother who always thought about her children. Unfortunately, she was too considerate of her children and put too much self-esteem into it. She could not allow her children to go against her. Her daughter was getting farther and farther away from her. As for her son, if things continue to develop like this, he would also be farther and farther away from her. Therefore, she had to find a daughter-in-law who was suitable for her and whom her son would like. Du Jiai had Madame Li behind her. So far, Chin Ying's mother was most satisfied with her. Otherwise, she would not have brought her to the southern province to attend Qin Xiu's grandfather's birthday party. In the back row, the old and the young chatted in detail. There were so many topics that they could talk until dawn. Chin Ying watched as her own mother set traps for Du Jiai from time to time, and Du Jiai got out of them reasonably. Chin Ying, who was amazed, watched the whole process with cold eyes. Her family's Nyang liked girls with fair skin the most. Her biological daughter, for example, ran outside every day, and her skin was tanned to a wheat-colored color. Every time, her Nyang didn't need her daughter, to speak. Just by looking at her wheat-colored skin, she would feel disgusted. Misty was quite good at coaxing people. Unfortunately, she only coaxed Chin Ying's mother. She wanted to coax her brother, who was also a pitiful person. It had been 2 or 3 years, but she still could not figure out what kind of girl her brother liked. She wanted Qin Xiu, but she kept coaxing Chin Ying's mother. Tut, tut, tut. She did not like this kind of girl who looked 3 steps ahead. She seemed to be generous, but was actually scheming. How could her brother Qin Xiu like her? Sometimes, it was not good for people to be too smart. If they were too smart, they would think that there was nothing they could not do and no one they could not get. The beautiful girl was destined to knock her head on the iron plate, Qin Xiu, until she bled. Thinking about it, Chin Ying turned on the car CD player and listened to the song. She did not know which country the song was from. The pitch was so high that Chin Ying's mother's brain tightened. She scolded, "Turn it off, Chin Ying." Chapter 4460. Look, was she blaming her for not being close to her mother? In the eyes of her mother, everything her daughter did was wrong. How could she be close to her? She really couldn't be close to her. Therefore, tomorrow, she would beg those relatives and friends who pretended to be concerned about her to stop persuading her. She was afraid that she would really not be able to resist not attending her grandfather's birthday banquet and leave with her luggage. She had to think about which route she should take if she really had to escape. Chin Ying's temperament was like old Master Qin's. Among his granddaughters, she was the most favored by old Master Qin. She was magnanimous and elegant. She would never give up halfway on what she liked. Therefore, she wouldn't give up halfway on the person she liked. She was still thinking about where to escape to next. She was completely unaware that the fact that she had someone in her heart was accidentally exposed by Qin Yi to Mother Qin. At night, the city's night scene was dazzling and extravagant. Some people began to get drunk, while others began to experience life and death. Yi Qian, who was sitting on the plane, closed her eyes. What awaited her next was a 30-day experience life and death. It took about 2.5 hours to fly from Xiang City to Orchid. Yi Qian had not yet arrived at Orchid. Du Jiai, who was staying at Caesar Hotel in Nan Province, called Mrs. Li and told her about her encounter with Yi Qian today. She also told her everything that she said to Mother Qin. I clearly hinted that Yi Qian, in order to climb up the social ladder, was trying to hook up with Xia Jinyuan, Li Jinyan, and Qin Xiao. However, Aunt Qin didn't respond at all. She clearly listened to me very carefully. I also clearly saw that she disliked Yi Qian. However, she didn't respond at all. It was very abnormal. Who was Mrs. Li? She was the daughter of old Madame Xiao Li, the legal elder sister who took her in after being angered to death. Her methods were all taught by old Madame Xiao Li, and her strategy was better than old Madame Xiao Li's. Hearing this, Mrs. Li's face immediately sank. She whispered, "Jia, you are wrong. Not only did you not make Mrs. Qin dislike Yi Qian, but you also made her more interested." What? Du Jia, who had never thought that she would overreach herself, was shocked. Her face turned pale as she asked, "Mom, what did I do wrong?" It was Aunt Qin who asked me, so I just answered in passing. How could he have made such a huge mistake that Aunt Qin would be interested in Yi Qian? Which part went wrong? Du Jia panicked. "Mom, hurry up and tell me. Whenever I think of Qin Xiao and Yi Qian getting close, my heart feels uneasy. Not to mention Du Jia. Even Madame Li felt uneasy. Her daughter originally wanted to make Mrs. Qin have a bad impression of Yi Qian, but the problem was hearing her daughter getting anxious over the phone. Madame Li patiently pointed out, "Yi Qian already said that she wasn't close to Qin Xiao, but you still brought it up again and again. This is your first mistake. Even if Mrs. Qin brought it up, you should have said that it was mainly up to Qin Xiao and that you couldn't change it. Secondly, you shouldn't have mentioned Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan, and you definitely shouldn't have mentioned that she was close to them. You wanted to say that Yi Qian was trying to climb up the social ladder, but have you ever thought about what kind of people Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan are? How could they not see that someone was trying to climb up their social ladder? If Yi Qian wanted to climb up their social ladder, would they be happy with her? Would they allow themselves to become a springboard for a lowly woman? They wouldn't. Or the three of them. Were their identities? Are they beautiful? There are plenty of women who are more beautiful than Yi Qian. Have they ever been tempted by beauty? It has never happened before. If that's the case, since they were happy with Yi Qian, and even Qin Xiao might like Yi Qian a little, Jai, think about it yourself. Didn't you do something stupid? Chapter 4461. Madame Li directly points her sword at Du Jiai's vital point. Du Jiai is like a fish that has been swatted ashore by a big wave. Her eyes are wide open, and she can't return to the big river that made her swim back and forth. That's right. Why didn't she think of that? Who was Xia Jinyuan? He was the grandson of the founding father, Master Xia, and the son of Commander-in-Chief Xia. Had he never seen a gorgeous woman before? He had seen a lot of them. Who was Li Jinyan? Who was Qin Xiao? They were all born in aristocratic families, and had seen countless young masters of noble families. Had they never seen a gorgeous woman before? They had seen a lot. Why were they only nice to Yi Qian? Did they really think that they liked Yi Qian because she was gorgeous? No, that's not it. She was wrong, very wrong. Not only did it not make Aunt Qin dislike Yi Qian, instead, it made Aunt Qin think that since Yi Qian could gain the favor of the three geniuses, there must be something special about her. If the extraordinary Yi Qian was liked by Qin Xiao, if Qin Xiao begged Aunt Qin to help him, would Aunt Qin do it? Du Jia thought of the worst-case scenario and asked in a trembling voice. Madame Li was silent for a long time. The room was so quiet that it was like still water. Du Jia waited for Madame Li's answer, but she didn't hear one after a long time. She became even more anxious. Jai, you're always too impatient. Mama can only tell you where you went wrong and how to change. Mama can't help you if you'll change or not. If Qin Xiu really begged Madame Qin, do you think she would help him? Yi Qian was born in a poor family, but she was very hardworking. And I can't deny that. She has strategies and means, and she's even better at keeping her composure than you are. Jai, think about how Yi Jifan's family will fall. Do you think Mrs. Qin will agree to it? Our whole family can't beat her. Yi Qian came from a poor background, but at least he graduated from the military academy. It's like wearing a fine suit. Mother can tell you with certainty that he will agree. He will definitely agree. There are many candidates for daughters-in-law, but there are very few daughters-in-law who are resourceful and capable. Pa! The phone slipped out of Du Jiai's hand and fell to the ground. Her teeth were chattering, and her face was ghastly pale. So, she had made the most stupid move. If that was really the case, then she would have no support and no one to rely on. The man she had loved for so many years would become someone else's boyfriend and husband. No, impossible, absolutely impossible. She had to think of a way to ruin everything. She couldn't let Yi Qian get close to Qin Xiu. No. First she had to figure out whether Qin Xiu liked Yi Qian or not. If he didn't like her, that would be for the best. If he did, Du Jai slowly moved her feet. She opened a bottle of mineral water with trembling hands and gulped it down in big gulps. She drank so much that water spilled out of her mouth and wet her collar. After a while, half of the large bottle was gone. She wouldn't sit around and wait for death. She definitely wouldn't. After finishing the water, Du Jai raised her hand and coldly wiped the water stain from the corner of her mouth. The mineral water bottle was twisted in her grip, making a kacha-kacha sound. The unfinished water spilled out of the bottle, wetting her hand and leaving mottled water stains on the carpet. Mrs. Li didn't say anything else. She hung up the phone gloomily and sat on the sofa for a long time without moving. Yi Qian again. She didn't know why, but when she first saw Yi Qian, she didn't feel happy for no reason. She even felt threatened. It was as if she had met her enemy in her previous life again. There was bound to be a bloodbath. She thought she was overthinking things, but now it seemed that she wasn't. Chapter 4462. Mrs. Li didn't talk to her daughter, Du Jai, anymore. Instead, she sat alone and thought about it. She didn't understand why Yi Qian made her feel threatened. She was just an orphan who had lost her mother at a young age and had no one to rely on. Although she was capable and had connections with Xia Jinyuan, Li Jinyan, and Qin Xiu, what could she do? Could she turn the world upside down? However, if she really caught Mrs. Qin's eye, it wouldn't be a surprise that she and Qin Xiu would be together for 100 years. If Qin Xiu liked her, how could Mrs. Qin stay away from Qin Xiu until the end? She had to let Jai think about it clearly first. She had to treat Yi Qian as a whetstone to polish Jai's arrogance. Arrogance came from self-confidence and confidence. However, if her arrogance was above self-confidence and confidence, then she would only be a step away from failure. Jai wasn't young anymore. She was 26 this year. If she didn't polish herself, it would be even more difficult for her to marry into the Qin family. This time, Mrs. Li made up her mind to watch from the sidelines and see what Du Jai would do. On the other side, Du Jai was just a wall away from Qining and Qin Xiu on a QQ video call. The external camera's resolution was a bit low, and their faces seemed to be covered with a layer of fog. The two siblings couldn't see each other clearly. My mother is getting more and more domineering. Brother, you're so smart. You managed to escape in time. Now you're high up in the mountains and flowing water, singing loudly all the way. As for your sister, it's a bit tough. She was caught. I'm going to book a ticket to your place. Are you going to receive me? Qining, who was wearing headphones, was talking while holding the mouse and copying the photos from the camera into her laptop. Her laptop was installed, so the hard drive was quite large and could store many photos. Her slender fingers kept clicking on the mouse, while her left hand was typing on the keyboard. Qin Xiu, who was woken up by her phone call and climbed out of bed to turn on the computer, looked at her indifferently with a cup of freshly brewed coffee in his hand. Qining kept talking, but he didn't say a word. He only cared about stirring the coffee in his hand. That Miss Du, you don't say, is really a wonderful person. The one she wants to sleep with is you, not our imperial concubine. Tell me, is there any use in currying favor with our imperial concubine? She looks pretty lively and smart, but why is she so inflexible when it comes to handling matters? Does she want to sleep with you or our mother? I'm confused. After stirring the coffee, Qin Xiu, who was about to put the rim of the cup to her lips, turned her head away silently. She almost choked on the coffee on her lips. Qining, please speak elegantly. Thank you. He reminded his sister, who would never give up unless her words astonished him. He felt a headache coming on, and he also felt a little helpless. The weirdo in the family referred to his elder sister, Qining. Her temper was wilder than the men's, and she was unconventional. Every time, her parents would be so angry that they would stomp their feet. Later on, his father got used to it and accepted it. At the same time, he discovered that his sister wasn't as stubborn and mischievous as he thought. Only in the family. The Empress didn't give up and swore to transform his sister into a noble family's young lady. In the end, the result was right before his eyes. The older sister continued to do as she pleased. The more she lived, the more carefree she became. The more she lived, the more she gave the imperial concubine at home a headache. It was also quite good. She could live the way she wanted. He was very supportive of his sister. In this way, he wouldn't appear to be a weirdo who might not get married in the future. There was a precedent before, so there would always be some forgiveness for the future. During the diplomatic negotiations, Ambassador Qin, who fought for the greatest benefits for the country, was very resourceful. He also had the temperament of taking one step before 3 steps. Chapter 4463. Qining finally found the photo taken at the airport tonight from a pile of photos and sent it directly to Qin Xiu. I've traveled the world and met all kinds of people. Unya, it won't be too late to come to Unya after I find that man. I sent you a photo. It's the type of person you like. Take a good look. If you really like her, we'll find a way to get her personal information. Qin Xiu, don't be led astray by me. Otherwise, I'll be in big trouble. Qin Xiu was 29 years old in the blink of an eye. The tree was growing well, but it didn't bear flowers. Qining didn't say it, but she was still anxious. She was really afraid that Qin Xiu would be influenced by her and not settle for marriage. Over the years, she had been traveling all over the world. Along the way, she had been paying attention to whether there was a girl Qin Xiu liked, but she had never met one. Who knew that she would accidentally meet him tonight when she picked him up at the airport? Qin Xiu didn't want to look at the photo and said lightly, "You have a man in your heart, and I have a girl in my heart. I'm hanging up. I need to organize some information." The amount of information was a little too much. Qin Ying blinked. She had never heard Qin Xiu say that he liked a girl. Look at it before hanging up. It won't take up a minute of your time. Although there was a girl he liked, there was nothing wrong with looking at the photo. Although the siblings didn't see each other often, they kept in touch and had a deep relationship. Seeing this, Qin Xiu frowned and dragged the video frame away from the dialogue box. Caught off guard, a military green figure appeared in front of his eyes and crashed into his heart. His heart pounded. It was a little fast, a little anxious, and a lot of pleasant surprises. With just one glance, Qin Xiu already knew who the figure in the photo was. It was so sudden that Qin Xiu didn't have time to control his facial expression. Qining saw it clearly on the other end of the video and couldn't help but say, "How can your expression tell me that I accidentally took a photo of my future sister-in-law? It can't be that magical." "Yes, it's her." Qin Xiu didn't hide it and admitted it openly. "It's amazing. It's so amazing that I feel helpless." Obviously, there was no fate between them, but his gaze lingered on the figure from his dreams and then fell on the beautiful side profile. Qin Xiu leaned close to the computer screen. His handsome yin expression was very focused. "I didn't expect you to meet her and even take a picture of her." Qining, she really wanted to swear right now. She had been searching for the man she liked for 5 years, but to no avail. She casually took a picture of the girl her younger brother liked. Ha ha ha! Damn it! In the end, he couldn't help but explode. Qin Xiu's gaze shifted from Yi Qian's photo to Qin, who was cursing through the camera lens. Qin, you'd better have a sex change operation. Yes, I'll chase after her after the sex change operation. Scram to wherever you're cooling off. After Qin finished speaking coldly, she glared fiercely again. At this moment, the smile on her face was gentle. He was so handsome that he looked like the younger brother of a noble young master in a painting. Damn it, her heart was stifled. Goodbye. After coldly saying that, Qin ended the video call. She still had to continue searching for her man. She hoped that her younger brother would be able to carry the beauty home as he wished. It was late at night, and there was no longer an endless stream of traffic outside the window. The car sped past, leaving only a string of taillights. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening. At 10:30, the plane from Xiang City to Londi arrived at Londi Airport on time. During the transfer, Yi Qian also left the plane together and reboarded about half an hour later. She turned on her phone and soon received a text message from Xia Jinyuan, reminding her to reply to him when she arrived at Londi. Yi Qian, with a deep smile on his face, immediately replied, "Arrived at Londi on time." Chapter 4464. At the same time, Qin came out of the shower and wiped her short hair with one hand. She wore a pair of hotel, disposable slippers as she sat at her desk and logged into QQ again. Qin Xiu's profile picture beeped. Qin Ying's pupils constricted as she opened the dialog box. She stared at the message in the dialog box. After a long time, a bitter smile appeared on her face. "I thought you were blessed by the god of luck, but..." The result was the same. She was taken, so she had to retreat. There were only 8 words in the dialog box. Just like Qin Xiu in real life, the language was concise and clear. Qin closed the dialog box and clicked on the folder where the photos were stored. She found the photos she had taken and clicked on the right button. As the mouse moved, she clicked on the left button and clicked on Confirm. The specially stored photos of the army green figure were successfully deleted. She then entered the recycle bin and cleaned up all traces. After doing all this, Qin left a message for Qin Xiu, who was no longer online. A gentleman knows what to do and what not to do. She reminded Qin Xiu to restrain himself. Although Qin Xiu's mother was tough, she was also very strict with her children's education. You could be arrogant, but you could never be domineering. You could be arrogant, but you could never be rude. You could beg, but you could never force. Qin and Qin Xiu had always been clear about what was important and what was not. They had never done anything that they knew was impossible, and it was even more impossible for them to steal someone's girlfriend. Even if they were unmarried, it was not acceptable. Qin deleted Yi Qian's photos, but Qin Xiu deleted Yi Qian's photos before her. The two siblings had only talked about the photos tonight. After that, they never mentioned it again, as if it had never happened. The night was getting darker, and the city was getting quieter. Yi Qian did not receive a reply from Xia Jinyuan until he boarded the plane. He had no choice but to turn off his phone and contact him when he arrived at the border. After 5.5 hours, the plane landed at the border at 1:30 a.m. Yi Qian finally received a text message. Seeing the address, Yi Qian's right hand tightened around his phone. She had always thought that she would train in the north of the border like before, but now she knew it was not the north but the south. When she arrived at the border, she had to transfer to another plane to the south. The earliest flight time was 3:20 in the morning to Akela City in the south. From there, they would enter the Yutian area's mountain foothills for training. The sloping plains at the foot of the mountain were very special. Between 1,700 to 2,200 meters above sea level, it was the Gobi Desert covered with coarse sand and gravel, where sparse vegetation grew. Between 1,400 and 1,700 meters above sea level, it was the Gobi Desert with bare coarse gravel. Between 1,200 and 1,400 meters above sea level, it was the Gobi Desert with ancient oases. Due to long-term irrigation, the soil was constantly maturing. This time, they entered the coarse Gobi Desert, which was more than 1,400 meters to 1,700 meters above sea level. They could see the continuous rise and fall of lofty mountains and steep ridges, as well as the snowy mountains that towered into the clouds. It wasn't that they hadn't entered the coarse Gobi Desert for training. It was just that they hadn't entered the Gobi Desert in the south, where there were many terrorist activities. It was no wonder that Captain Xia had said that the training this time was all live ammunition with additional magazines. It turned out that he had already hinted to her that the training this time was really not ordinary training. Unfortunately, she did not react at that time and thought it was really a live ammunition training. Taking a deep breath, Yi Qian grabbed her luggage and walked toward the departure hall. It was now 1:40 a.m. She could go to the departure hall to rest for a while before preparing to board the plane. The departure hall was not very quiet. Most of the passengers were tourists who came to the border. Yi Qian looked around and found a seat in the corner. Chapter 4465. The plane took off at 3:20 a.m. on time and arrived in Accra City 40 minutes later. There weren't many passengers on the plane, not even half. Fortunately, it was a small plane, so it didn't seem empty. The flight attendant reminded the passengers to fasten their seat belts and turn off their phones. She also wished the passengers a pleasant journey. Yi Qian walked out of the cabin at 4:30 a.m. and received another message on his phone. Yi Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry after reading it. Why did she feel like Captain Xia was deliberately sending one message after another? Was he afraid that she would change her mind halfway and return with her luggage? He could have said it all at once, but he wanted to send it over several times. It was as if he was afraid that she would change her mind. Got it. Any other instructions? After replying to this message, Xia Jinyuan took out his phone and couldn't help but chuckle. His girl probably knew that he sent it in multiple messages. Not yet. Wait patiently. See you in 6 hours. Got it, Yi Qian replied. She still had to wait for two veterans, both of whom she knew. He was fluent in 6 languages and an electronic explosives expert. The other was a graduate of the Aerospace Academy who had transferred from the Air Force to the Army. He was a Southerner who was good at flying helicopters. Their plane wouldn't arrive at Accra Airport until 6:30 a.m., so she could take advantage of the time to rest. Accra Airport at 4 a.m. was even more deserted. Other than the passengers who had just left their plane, there weren't many people around. There were only a few people at the connecting airport. Even if there were only a few people, not all of them were airport personnel. There were also 2 sharp-eyed people who disguised themselves as plainclothes officers. One of the plainclothes officers was quite sharp. He instantly caught Yi Qian's gaze. His sharp gaze made Yi Qian feel like a long knife cutting through the air. One was a plainclothes officer, and the other was a soldier. When their eyes met, the plainclothes officer thought that he had noticed the situation, but in the blink of an eye, he became a normal person again. He even smiled at Yi Qian in a friendly manner. Yi Qian also smiled back at him. Things were complicated in the south, so there was no need to make a fuss about encountering plainclothes police. But Yi Qian, who was walking out of the exit with his luggage, frowned slightly. He had a feeling that they were looking for someone. After exiting the exit, Yi Qian headed towards the airport's main hall. When the time came, he and GK would meet up there. The main hall of the airport was also rather quiet. It was empty, and the rows of seats were empty. There were also plainclothes people mixed in with the crowd. This time, Yi Qian did not pay much attention to them. Chapter 4466. Yi Qian, who was sleeping with her head on her luggage, did not notice the 4 girls' hesitation. They stammered for a while, lowered their heads, and said a few words. In the end, they pushed the luggage trolley over and sat down quietly 2 seats away from Yi Qian. They did not dare to look at Yi Qian. Just sitting there made them feel much more relaxed. This was their first time visiting the border. They had read too many posts about the dangers of the border, so they were a little scared. Now that the plane was delayed, they were even more scared in the middle of the night. They did not dare to gather with other people. Yi Qian happened to appear and became their support. Yi Qian was not completely asleep. She knew that there were people sitting not far from her. She also felt a few harmless gazes sizing her up. Since they were harmless, she did not care. After a while, more people came and sat down. They were all sitting around Yi Qian. It was clearly a corner, but it became the place with the most tourists. Put it here, Be quiet. Can't you see that she's sleeping? Don't sit too close. The four girls purposely left 2 seats empty. Even though the people who came over spoke in hushed voices, Yi Qian heard them clearly. She wanted to sleep, but the passengers were all walking towards her. No matter how light their footsteps were or how low their voices were, they were not light to her. She was about to get up and change seats when she heard a passenger sitting in the row behind her whisper, "Everyone is nervous. I don't even know if they caught the person. It's making us afraid to go out." They definitely didn't catch the person. If they did, they wouldn't be so strict. Don't talk about it. It's the middle of the night. My back is cold. Cold back? There's a soldier sitting behind you. What are you afraid of? Yi Qian, who was about to get up and change seats, quietly lowered her head. It turned out that she was now playing a role in stabilizing the situation. She also found out why there were so many plainclothes officers at the airport. They were really looking for someone. They definitely did not find a person. Otherwise, the plainclothes officers would not be searching the area from time to time. The quiet waiting room was very suitable for sleeping. Soon, the four girls fell asleep. When their alarm rang, the four of them opened their eyes in a daze. It took them a while to get used to it. She left? When did she leave? A girl sitting closest to Yi Qian's seat whispered in surprise, "I didn't sleep very deeply. I even felt a few people pass by us. But I don't know when she left." "You're afraid that you'll wake us up. Stop talking. We need to catch the morning bus." Luggage. Take your own luggage. Check if you left anything behind." The four girls hurriedly woke up the passengers who had fallen asleep nearby. Some passengers also began to wake up slowly. They were all rushing to catch the morning bus, and it was almost time. Yi Qian was cleaning up in the bathroom. It was 6 o'clock, and Bai He and GK would arrive in at most 40 minutes. At this time, Bai He and GK, who were dressed in casual clothes, were still on the plane. They didn't sleep. Both of them ran to the bathroom to wash their faces and chewed 2 pieces of chewing gum. After tidying up, they looked refreshed and leisurely read the newspaper provided by the plane. The two of them didn't talk much during the entire journey. What did these two men talk about? It was not easy to talk about work-related matters, but personal matters. What personal matters did they have? They looked at each other every day. They even knew about the mosquito bites on their butts. What other personal matters could there be? Without any personal matters, the two of them maintained a high level of tacit understanding. After tidying themselves up, they read the newspaper and waited for the plane to land. The plane landed at 6:20. At 6:30, the two of them prepared to walk out of the exit. GK glanced at Baihe's chin and muttered, "You disappeared in the last 5 minutes because you were shaving behind my back. You're so scheming." Chapter 4467. Bai rubbed his chin. "Not bad. Very clean. Scheming? How prejudiced. I just pay more attention to personal hygiene than you. Also, how can a gentleman be rude in front of a lady?" Bai He, who came from Jiangnan's water town, answered unhurriedly, but his footsteps were slightly faster. Yi Qian was the only female soldier in their team. She was considered a team treasure. As male soldiers, they couldn't be too sloppy and scare off the only female soldier. Sophistry. GK concluded with 2 words and rolled her eyes at Bai He. Bai raised his eyebrows. Clutching the same camouflage travel bag as Yi Qian's, he quickened his steps. 6:30. How long do you want her to wait? Naturally, the sooner the better. GK also quickened her steps and secretly rubbed her chin. It seemed quite clean and didn't prickle her hand. As for the clothing, he had specially arranged it so there wouldn't be a problem. The two walked out of the cabin and walked through the cabin to the exit. As the 2 tall figures walked out of the exit, several gazes faintly fell on them without leaving a trace. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't notice. Even if they did, they would think they were looking for someone to pick them up. Bai He and GK felt a sense of danger from those gazes. The two also pretended to inadvertently sweep their eyes over the faces mixed in with the crowd. Their eyes narrowed slightly. Plain clothes. Looks like it's not very peaceful. GK maintained her smile and said in a low voice, 5 people. 2 directly in front, 1 at 2 o'clock, 2 at 8 o'clock with guns. When one of the plain clothes saw the 2 appear, His hand unconsciously moved to the side of his waist. It looked a bit like he was pulling up his pants, but it was actually an action of reaching for a gun. With one look, it was obvious he hadn't been in plain clothes for long. Perhaps because there wasn't enough police force, inexperienced, young plainclothes were sent out. The security in the city is good. You need to be careful when entering the mountains. But he retracted his gaze and held his head high. His inadvertent action caused the older plainclothes to breathe a sigh of relief. Their tense backs also relaxed. Fortunately, there was no problem with the person. There's no problem with the person. It should be the armed police. An old plainclothes told his family, and at the same time made a gesture to disperse. The other plainclothes officers who received the order retracted their gazes at the same time and scanned their surroundings again. The arrival gate, departure hall, and hall were the main places they were keeping a close eye on. They had been watching for 3 days, but there were still no leads on the few groups of people they needed to arrest. They could only guard the place to the death. A plainclothes policeman brushed past them. They served in different systems and were also guardians of the light of the homes. They did not communicate at all. They did not even make eye contact. They were strangers to begin with. There was no need for communication between strangers. It was almost 7 o'clock at Accra Airport, and the number of passengers gradually increased. Most of them were from the local ethnic minorities. They had high noses, deep eyes, and fair skin. Regardless of gender, they were all extremely beautiful, especially the children with carefree smiles. All of them had big eyes, high noses, and fair skin. They were so beautiful and cute that Yi Qian could not take his eyes off them. Yi Qian could not understand what they were saying either. They spoke very fast, as if they were reading a heavenly book. There were also some faces from the West and other countries coming and going. If not for the presence of plainclothes, Yi Qian would not have felt any tension. In this place, the country had invested a lot of manpower and resources to maintain the stability of the country. There was indeed no need to be overly afraid. At 6:40, Yi Qian finally saw 2 familiar figures. They were comrades who had fought side by side. As long as they appeared, he would recognize them immediately. Chapter 4468. Both of them saw Yi Qian at the same time. Their eyes met, and the smiles on their faces slowly widened. Yi Qian, who had already changed into casual clothes, walked towards them, and they strode towards Yi Qian. Just like before, coupled with the fact that the two of them had suddenly walked very quickly, a few plainclothes officers' gazes fell on them at first, but they quickly moved away. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Bai immediately reached out to take Yi Qian's luggage. Weaving Sparrow, who was a step behind, clenched her teeth and reached out her hand as well. "Long time no see." Weaving Sparrow shook Yi Qian's hand. "Do you feel like getting angry after waiting for so long? Don't be shy. Feel free to vent your anger. We have thick skin and can handle it." Because of their familiarity, they didn't feel restrained. Even their conversation was much more casual. There was no longer the distance between them. Yi Qian shook her hand and replied with a smile, "Captain Xia told me in advance and didn't give me a chance to get angry. Let's try next time." "Ha ha, no problem." Weaving Sparrow smiled and chatted with Yi Qian. "Flying from the northeast to the northwest is too far. We were worried that we would be late before boarding the plane. Fortunately, the flight was smooth and we didn't make you wait for too long." Bai held a piece of luggage in each hand. Weaving Sparrow started the conversation. By the time they walked out of the airport lobby, the 3 of them had already started chatting. Bai smiled and gestured at Yi Qian, joking, "The food in the military academy is good. You've grown taller since the last time we met. Before, I had to take a step back when talking to you. Now, I only need to take half a step back." Bai He and Weaving Sparrow were both above sea level. No, it should be said that other than the scouts who were below 1.8 meters, the rest of the special forces were all over 1.82 meters tall. As a result, Yi Qian, who was 1.68 meters tall, had to look up to speak to them whenever he got too close. Because of the height difference, it was a topic of conversation among the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade for a long time. Xia Jinyuan let them talk about this kind of topic without any malicious intent. Occasionally, he would join in the banter. Yi Qian had once been troubled by her height. They were too tall, and even she, who was not short, looked very short in comparison. It was most obvious during the assembly. A dwarf had barged into the land of giants. Sigh. She was also very helpless. Now that he said that she had grown a lot taller, Yi Qian felt very happy. The food is indeed not bad. Fortunately, it's a little long. Otherwise, my neck would hurt talking to you guys, she replied with a smile, causing the two male soldiers on her left and right to chuckle. Outside the airport, there were armed police on duty. There were 3 posts, one in the middle and one on the left and right. The 3 of them walked past the middle post. Facing the passing passengers, Weaving Sparrow lowered her voice and said, "Looks like there's a big movement. Plainclothes and armed police have been mobilized." Something did happen. In the wee hours of the morning, I even acted as a divine beast to guard the house. Originally, I was planning to find a corner to sleep alone, but later on, there were at least 15 people sitting in it, making it the corner with the most people in the hall. Later on, it was too eye-catching, so I changed in my only set of casual clothes. Yi Qian recalled the scene she saw when she woke up. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she also felt a faint sense of pride. Later on, she found that there were always people looking at her, intentionally or unintentionally, so she went to the bathroom to change in her only set of casual clothes. Only then did she stop being looked at. There were taxis outside the airport. The 3 of them first took a taxi to the city, then took a jeep arranged by the military to enter the Gobi Desert. A taxi stopped in front of the 3 of them. Bahi immediately tried to open the back door, but it didn't open. The taxi driver leaned his head slightly against the steering wheel. He first looked at Bahi, then at Weaving Sparrow, and finally at Yi Qian. The locked door opened with a click. Outside the car, the 3 of them secretly exchanged a hand signal. Chapter 4469. For a moment, the 3 of them wanted to give up on the car, but Bahi whispered, "Get in first, I know Uyghur." If there really was something wrong with the driver, the 3 of them could easily subdue him. Yi Qian hesitated for a few seconds. She was worried that there might be a suicide bomb in the car. GK saw her hesitation and smiled. "It's fine, get in." Sometimes, when they encounter problems here, it was not a small matter like in the mainland. It was a matter of life and death. GK and Bahi were familiar with the situation in the southern border. Naturally, they wouldn't turn a blind eye to it. Before the car door opened, Yi Qian whispered bomb. The 2 male soldiers were overjoyed. Caution was a good thing, but they couldn't be too cautious. Yi Qian's face turned red from their laughter. She really thought that way. Bahi sat in the front, while Yi Qian and GK sat in the back. After telling the driver the address, the 3 of them didn't stop talking because of the driver's strange behavior. They didn't stop talking about the army and the military academy. They also talked about the wind and shadows of Akela. The 3 of them had become tourists who had come here for a vacation. They didn't know what was wrong with the driver, but they were 100% sure that there was something wrong. He originally refused to take them, but when he saw Yi Qian, he changed his mind and opened the door. There was something wrong with his eyes. There was obvious hostility. When the 3 of them got in the car, there was even a trace of fierceness in his eyes. Yi Qian had already touched his wrist because of the fierceness in his eyes. Silver Wire had been quiet for a long time. If there really was something wrong, he could let Silver Wire move around. Yi Qian had never been to the southern border. Influenced by the news from his previous life, Yi Qian was already prepared for battle. It was Yi Qian's first time visiting the southern border, but Bahi and GK weren't. Although the southern border was more backward than the northern border, there were more ethnic minorities. Due to different living habits and religious beliefs, the southern border was indeed more dangerous than the northern border. However, as long as you follow their customs, the people of the southern border were also hospitable and wouldn't be hostile. At least, Bahi and GK had never met anyone in the southern border. This time was an exception. The 2 of them looked at each other as they got in the car. They both thought of the plainclothes officers that appeared in the airport. The 3 of them were very vigilant and wary of the driver. They didn't let their guard down as they talked. The 3 of them talked about the scenery of the southern border. The driver, who hadn't said anything, suddenly said a few words in the local language. He spoke so quickly that no one could hear what he was saying. Chapter 4470. His sudden interruption caused Yi Qian, who didn't understand, to narrow her eyes. She glanced at the driver, who had a fierce expression on his face. She paused for a moment and asked her comrade with a smile, "What did the driver say?" "I didn't understand a single word. Did you guys understand?" GK raised her eyebrows and spread her hands casually. She smiled and said, "I don't understand." Bai turned his head and asked the driver in Mandarin, "Excuse me, were you talking to the three of us?" The commander, who was driving, quickly glanced at Bai He. His deep eyes were cold, like the chill of a winter morning. He then said a bunch of words in the local language. Bai turned his head and said to his comrade sitting behind him, "I don't understand because of the language barrier." Bai He, who had turned his head to speak, turned his body and casually made a gesture with his left hand. The two people sitting in the back laughed. The three of them looked at each other and smiled in tacit understanding. It wasn't that Bai He didn't understand. He understood. The first sentence was about the weather in the inland, and the second sentence was about why they had come to their place to play. That's right, the driver was asking the three of them why they had come to their place. They had indeed met a few unfriendly locals, and it was a taxi driver. The distance from the airport to the city wasn't far. The territory was vast and sparsely populated, so there was no need to build an airport dozens of kilometers away from the city. The car was driving very fast. The dashboard showed that the speed was over 125 kilometers per hour, and it was still rising. Yi Qian couldn't help but hold the wristband in one hand. His dark eyes were cold. GK secretly patted Yi Qian's arm, reassuring her that she didn't need to be nervous and that they would be there for her. When the car reached a fork in the road and turned right, Bai He and GK knew something was wrong. They could have just driven along the main road to the city, but the driver chose to turn right. Where was he planning to take them? Bai He's right hand reached out from the gap between the front passenger seat and the door. He curled 3 fingers in the middle and raised his thumb and pinky. Then he kept the same action and retracted his hand to his ear. His pinky pointed to his mouth and his thumb pressed against his ear. The whole gesture took about 3 seconds. After receiving the signal, Yi Qian said to his 2 comrades, "I want to take a nap. Let me know when we arrive." "Okay." Weaving Sparrow took out her phone and nodded with a smile. The 3 of them fell silent. Yi Qian closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Bai He pretended to look at the scenery outside. Weaving Sparrow sent a text message to the troops in the Gobi Desert. Xia Jinyuan did not see the text message immediately. About an hour later, they finished the project and took out their phones to turn on. Dressed in desert camouflage, he crept over to the camouflage tent to look for Z7 Han Jing. The location is Weaver's phone. "I received a message an hour ago saying that I might have encountered Eastern Turks." Z7 was in the middle of establishing a data connection. Upon hearing this, he replied in disbelief. "How could they encounter bad guys when they left the airport? I'm not that lucky. You're thinking too much. Cut the crap. The airport isn't very peaceful. Plainclothes officers have been deployed inside and outside. The north has always been a bit chaotic." Xia Jinyuan took off his helmet, revealing his usual unruly short hair. His chiseled and elegant facial features were cold and ruthless. His dark eyes were fixed on the computer screen. As Z7 completed the tracking, a small red dot appeared on the computer screen. It was actually heading in their direction. Chapter 4471. Weaver Sparrow's message said that suspected extremists had been kidnapped. The GPS showed that they were heading towards the Gobi Desert. Z7 Han Jing stared at the GPS for a few seconds and smiled. "I told you we wouldn't be so lucky. They're all heading towards us." "No, the 3 of them didn't come over." Xia Jinyuan interrupted coldly. "The Gobi Desert is northwest to the south. They went straight to the northernmost area. The northernmost area has never been peaceful. Since Weaver Sparrow said that suspected extremists have been found, there's a 90% chance that it's true. The other 1% might not be extremists but other criminals. Due to the different living habits of the Huck, Cole, and other clans in the north, that area was considered a forbidden area. Even the local garrison would not easily set foot in that area for fear of violating their taboo and causing unnecessary conflict. Therefore, they rarely set foot in that area. Coupled with the fact that it was a vast area, there were bound to be some small movements. Once the armed police officers sensed something strange, they would immediately report it to the local special forces of Akel City. However, there had been no news of suspected extremists in the northernmost area. Otherwise, with the country's strict crackdown on extremists, they would have been wiped out long ago. Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened as he unconsciously stroked his steel gun. It seemed that they had to make a trip to the northernmost area. The residents living in the depths of the mountains carried illegal weapons. Therefore, they had to plan carefully. The most important thing now was to find out whether they were extremists or other criminals. Drug dealers, human traffickers, smugglers, there were all kinds of them. In recent years, the country had become more strict with the border control. Therefore, although there were problems in the forbidden area, it had always been relatively peaceful. Usually, if there were any strange movements, it would be solved secretly. Now, Weaver Sparrow, Bai He, and Yi Qian were heading towards the most complicated area in the northernmost area. Xia Jinyuan's eyes were dark and unreadable as he gently stroked his gun. He said to Han Jing, "Retract the GPS and combine it with the satellite map." Han Jing's eyes widened as he carefully looked at the location again. At the same time, he called up the satellite map and did a technical overlap. As the two overlapped accurately to a certain point, Han Jing sucked in a breath of cold air on the spot. It really went to the northernmost point. F*CK, this is big trouble. They actually went to the northernmost area. Before they set off for the Gobi Desert for training, the big boss did not forget to give them orders to follow the rules. They had to watch over the special forces who had just entered the border for training. They must not cross the front line and cause discord, or other organizations would take advantage of the situation. The northernmost area was a very sensitive area, and they couldn't suppress it with firepower. They were afraid that it would cause a backlash, and they were even more worried about the dissatisfaction of the local people. And there were people who were not afraid of death. There were even some people who were poisoned by extremists and used by Forns' way. Ants that were to be dealt with in secret. They would be dealt with without mercy. If there were no abnormalities in the northernmost region, no one would easily enter or leave. Sometimes the border officers would arrive by helicopter. They would not disturb the peace of the place. They had always been in a subtle, probing, and vigilant way of coexisting peacefully. No one took the initiative to cross the line, and no one took the initiative to stir up trouble. This was the case for the locals, the troops, the armed police, and the police. Chapter 4472. Han Jing felt that this was a tricky situation. If he didn't deal with it properly, it might cause a dispute. There was another problem. If they were really extremists, were they blind? Kidnapping special forces? Were they asking for death? After lamenting for a while, Han Jing asked in a low voice, "Q King, do you think they're extremists? Are they blind? Can't they see that they can't afford to offend them? Are they blind?" For some reason, Han Jing sympathized with the unknown person who dared to kidnap 3 special forces. How audacious! How audacious! Are they blind? What a waste of their eyes! Xia Jinyuan paused as he stroked the gun. He suddenly looked up at Han Jing. His gaze was so fierce that Han Jing felt a chill down his spine. He clenched his teeth and asked, "Don't look at me like that. It makes me feel like I'm going to die in the next second." Xia Jinyuan laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, you're very useful. I won't let you die." "That's a good question. If they're not blind, then they might not be extremists." If Weaving Sparrow's guess was wrong, the 3 kidnapped people were less dangerous. But it was still worrying. If they were really kidnapped by extremists, they didn't need to be restrained anywhere else. They could just lead the troops there and find out everything about the other party. It wouldn't work at the northernmost part. This place was too F*King sensitive. They couldn't fight or kill. They couldn't even say anything harsh. There were also many policies to appease them. It was worrying. Although Xia Jinyuan was reminded by Han Jing His headache continued. The three of them definitely had a chance to escape. But the point was, if they really encountered extremists as soldiers, they wouldn't just stand by and do nothing. The Chinese had always been fighting with the powers within their borders. The existence of a Shuiyu brigade could be said to be to eliminate the influence of the foreign powers within the country. As long as there was a hint of it, the military would immediately give the order to eliminate it without hesitation. Now that his three soldiers were kidnapped to the most sensitive place in the north, Xia Jinyuan fell silent. He was thinking about how to deal with it. We have to report it to the boss. This matter can't be blown out of proportion. We can only do it by hand. Han Zheng said in a low voice, the corners of his mouth forming a straight line. It can be big or small, but we can't cause a conflict. There was a deathly silence in the tent. Everyone held their breaths. Only the atmosphere was so heavy that it felt like an invisible boulder was pressing down on the two of them, making it hard for them to breathe. Xia Jinyuan did not say anything. He seemed to be thinking about something. Han Zheng, who was sitting there, was silent for a while. Suddenly, he made a sound of surprise and looked at the captain, whose cold expression had slightly dissipated. Something's not right, Q King. Something is not right. He furrowed his brows and said the key point that he had just thought of. If there's something wrong with the driver, it's impossible that the three of them didn't discover it early on. Even if they discovered it not long ago, the three of them could have directly subdued the driver in the car and replaced him with the driver. At the same time, they could have sent the suspicious person to the police to deal with. The three of them didn't move at all and let the driver take them away. They even sent you a message to tell you about this. The three of them clearly had a chance to escape, but they didn't do it. It's obvious that they did it on purpose. F***CK. Did I worry about them for nothing? They deliberately crashed into the car and deliberately followed the driver to the northernmost side. I bet that Weaving Sparrow and White Crane already know where they are going. It's hard to say for sure about Qing Niao. She has never been here before. Han Zheng, who had sorted out the key point, suddenly relaxed. His tall and big body slumped into a sitting position. F***CK. I almost thought that something big was going to happen. Even if something happened to them, they F***King asked for it. Chapter 4473. That being said, Han Zheng was still worried. Even if they bumped into them on purpose, they had to be able to escape successfully. Xia Jinyuan, who was thinking about how to deal with the problem, glanced at his comrade who had been kidnapped on purpose. He smirked and mocked. I thought you'd become smarter, but you're still the same. Your short-lived IQ is unreliable. As a good friend of many years, Han Zheng knew how vicious the man in front of him was. Even though he knew it clearly, he still found it difficult to breathe. F***CK. His IQ had always been reliable. When had it ever been short-lived? The hurt Han Zheng said expressionlessly. Then tell me how to deal with it. From now on, we'll only discuss the problem. No personal attacks. He was injured. He needed to heal. Xia Jinyuan's dark and deep eyes flashed with a dark light. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he thought of a solution. Slowly, he said, if the other party's identity is as Weaving Sparrow said, then our matter will be easy to handle. Our matter will be easy? What does he mean? I don't understand at all. Han Zheng leaned forward and asked humbly, what's easy? It's difficult. He had no choice. He hadn't thought of a solution yet, but he already had a plan. Practice. Xia Jinyuan slowly spat out these two words. He hooked his hand and hooked the belt of his helmet that was placed at the side. He ran his fingers through his short hair and smiled arrogantly and terrifyingly. He said to Han Zheng, go, find out what happened in Accra in the past few days. It will be easier for us to do things. It will also be easier for them to do things. It will also be easier for those soldiers who are about to enter the battlefield after training. He was referring to Yi Qian, Weaving Sparrow, and Bai He. Years of comradeship had already formed a tacit understanding. When Xia Jinyuan said two words, Han Zheng's eyes widened at a speed visible to the naked eye. He stared at the young captain who had put on his helmet. His eyes were filled with a terrifying fierceness. He exclaimed, are you crazy? It's a ready-made opportunity. No, it's not an opportunity. Something will happen. Han Jing shook his head. I want to report to G3. What you're doing is completely out of the plan. What do you mean by out of the plan? Is it within the plan to arrange their escape route? The enemy won't tell us in advance when the bullets are coming, so we have a plan. Xia Jinyuan laughed coldly, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's. Instantaneous changes, there's no way to plan. Sooner or later, I'll have to use it. How can I let go of a ready-made practice phone? It's a shame to waste it. Han Jing panicked. OSH*T. Now is not the time for them to practice. We have to think of a way to successfully rescue Qing Yao and the other two. It's not only for practice, but also to save people. I have both. At this time, Xia Jinyuan was the king of the Snowfield Brigade, a king who was good at grasping all opportunities and seizing all opportunities. Han Jing sat there silently and looked at his good friend and comrade. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. It had been a long time since they met. The current Xia Jinyuan was no longer the Xia Jinyuan of the past. He had undergone earth-shattering changes. When they first met, even the look in his eyes was so unruly that he deserved a beating. The way he walked was arrogant, and the way he spoke was also very arrogant. He was arrogant as if he was ordering people around. However, he was also very loyal. He was like a shining body that could call friends wherever he went. At that time, Xia Jinyuan was fully deserving of the title Devil Incarnate. Chapter 4474. Now, Xia Jinyuan was no longer the luminous figure who called out to his friends. His arrogant aura had become deep and reserved. His aura could only be seen when he moved. It was no longer the arrogance of being fearless, nor was it the arrogance of being smart. Instead, it was the arrogance of scheming and strategizing. This kind of arrogance was terrifying because there was no way to know what he was planning behind his arrogance. I'll contact the boss. You ask around. Xia Jinyuan did not change his mind because of Han Jing's anxiousness. Since Qing Yao, GK, and Bai He were all in danger, then it didn't matter if there was another group of people. The more people there were, the more strength there was. Soon, Major General Yang, who was still in the meeting, found out about this. He did not have a headache because of this. Instead, his eyes flashed with joy. He smiled at Xia Jinyuan and said, "It's a good thing to have a knife after killing a sheep." They received the latest news that there was a group of outlaws in the northernmost area trying to stir up trouble. When they received the information, they were worried about how to sneak into the northernmost area. Who knew that they would send themselves to their doorstep? Akela City has not been peaceful recently. A group of outlaws secretly carried out a large-scale instigation, trying to incite the people to start a riot. The military has clearly grasped the personal information of the three top targets. 2 of them are from the Hanu tribe, and 1 is from the Cole tribe. They are all residents of the northernmost area. The 3 of them left the country half a year ago and sneaked back from the border half a month ago. 4 days ago, a shop in Akela City was smashed, which was the beginning of their riot plan. The personal information of the 3 of them is clearly grasped. The military has ordered cleanup and must kill them. If the 3 of them were really kidnapped to the northernmost area, it would be a good thing given the current situation. The military plans to wipe them out and leave no one alive. Xia Jinyuan nodded. Yes, it was indeed a good thing for him. Xia Jinyuan, who did not want Major General Yang to know his plan, had a smile on his face. He said in a deep voice, "I want to know when the military will take action." He did not care about anything else. He only cared about when the operation would be carried out so that he could train his troops. He asked in a cold voice. Major General Yang's heart skipped a beat. He said in a deep voice, "Did something happen to the 3 of them?" "Not yet, but if we don't act now, it's hard to guarantee that nothing will happen." Nothing happened. Major General Yang breathed a sigh of relief and said lightly, "What's the hurry? Didn't I just say that I was in a meeting? Even if there are actions, they will only be issued after the meeting ends. We can't wait." The 3 of them are very dangerous. They're all wearing camouflage bags with only camouflage uniforms in the bags. With the hatred the outlaw organization has for our army, once they find out that all three of them are active soldiers, Major General, how long do you think they can wait? I hope that we can move out and head to the northernmost area as soon as possible. Once we discover anything strange, we will immediately take action. It's time to clean up the northernmost area. If we leave it alone, it will only grow bigger and bigger. If we don't clean it up, it will only grow bigger and bigger. At that time, even the real, ordinary people might be in trouble. Our military's attack is not just for suppression, but also to intimidate those things hiding in the dark corners like rats. My hand has stretched too far. It's time to raise my strength and behead him, Xia Jinyuan said calmly. Major General Yang could feel the murderous aura coming from him through the radio. Han Jing silently turned his head. What he said sounded like it was true. He could not bear to look at it. Major General Yang, who could not see Xia Jinyuan's expression at this time, really thought that he was anxious. Even though he was in the capital, he was also anxious. Chapter 4475. What's the use of being anxious? The approval had not been issued yet, so they had to be calm. There would definitely be a military attack. Similar words had been said by Commander-in-Chief Xia during the meeting 10 minutes ago. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia was even more direct. These criminals who had walked onto a road of no return should be properly cleaned up. It would be best if all of them were wiped out, so as to avoid future headaches for the local armed police and police. If they were wiped out, none of the active criminals would be able to escape. Furthermore, they would not be arrested. They would be wiped out on sight to declare their country's determination to eliminate terrorists. Since they had already started causing trouble, if they did not take action to clean them up, they would really think that the military would not dare to do anything to them. However, these decisions had not been issued in the form of documents, so Major General Yang naturally could not announce it immediately. He said calmly, "Don't be impatient, Colonel Xia. Don't forget that you are not participating in the battle now. You're just entering the Gobi Desert for training. I will report to you at the meeting and inform you immediately if there are any changes. All you can do now is wait patiently. Also, I'm very confident in the three of them. Since they have already discovered something strange, it is not the style of a special forces soldier to sit and wait for death." Major General Yang was also anxious, but he could not say it out loud. 3 special forces soldiers were kidnapped by a taxi driver who was suspected to be a criminal. He did not believe that the 3 of them did not discover the problem early on. No, if he did not believe that the 3 kidnapped special forces soldiers did not discover the problem early on, then why was Xia Jinyuan in such a hurry to lead the soldiers to the northernmost side? This kid, what is he planning now? Based on his understanding of him, it was definitely not a good idea. Damn it, I almost got screwed over by him. Major General Yang's face darkened instantly. He had kindly comforted him not to be impatient and that it would be easy to solve. But the result, this kid had other plans. Just you wait. Major General Yang gritted his teeth and said ruthlessly, "The next time we go to the capital, see how I will deal with you. You are digging traps for me every day." Colonel Xia, who had set a trap for his chief, did not feel guilty at all. He only sighed that his chief was becoming more and more slippery and difficult to trick. "You have given us a good opportunity to plan. I don't want to waste it. Whether we can succeed or not depends on you. Go back and continue to attend the meeting. I will wait for your orders." Colonel Xia ended the call. Whether or not he would participate in this operation, he was 50% confident, which was enough. Digging traps for the boss every day, you're also a talent. Han Jing, who had been watching the whole time, gave the bold captain a thumbs up. Boss didn't get a heart attack because of you. You're strong enough. He suddenly understood why Commander-in-Chief Xia did not stop his only son from joining the Special Forces. It was definitely a wise move. Since he had a headache from being harmed, he might as well chase them out to harm others. Thus, the boss became the victim. Xia Jinyuan lifted his leg to kick his comrade, who was teasing him. Seeing this, Han Jing laughed and said, "I'll dodge." Then, he nimbly dodged. You only want to train the troops. You have to see if the higher-ups agree. If the higher-ups don't agree, It's all wishful thinking. 50% is enough. Xia Jinyuan licked his lips, which had been dried by the sun, and sneered viciously. Everyone says they are the best. Let's see how far they can run. Go, keep an eye on the three of them. Don't let them run off without knowing where they are. Han Zhang continued with his words. Xia Jinyuan turned on the wireless communication and said to the veterans nearby, "There will probably be a new operation. Pack up and leave immediately once the order is given." Chapter 4476. What's the latest operation? Vice Captain G3's voice came first. Xia Jinyuan walked out of the camouflage tent and answered as he walked. "Suppressing bandits. Where are they?" "Location. I have something to discuss with you." The veterans who had accompanied the new recruits in their training recently had a few layers of skin on their shoulders and backs peeling off from the sun. They were clearly suffering, but when they heard that there was a new operation, one or two of them were like withered trees that had been given a new lease of life. They were so happy that it was as if they were singing and dancing vigorously. The special forces who were training were also very excited. They had been in the Gobi Desert for more than half a month. Every day, besides being chased by the veterans, they were still chased by the veterans. They didn't seem to have learned any other skills, but their ability to escape had improved a lot. Last night, they were chased by the veterans. The captain, who had always been like the king of hell, descended from the sky and stood on a weathered stone. He looked down at them coldly like a wolf. When you're on the battlefield, the first thing you have to do is to survive. If you're alive, everything will be easy. The soldiers I want don't King think about sacrificing all day. If you sacrifice yourselves, wouldn't it be a waste of resources? Remember, even if you know you can't do it, don't do it. Running away is also a strategy. But if I see you abandoning your comrades or running away like a headless fly, even if you can come back alive, you may not be able to leave alive from my hands. Running away is a strategy. The bottom line is not being afraid of death, not running away before the battle, not abandoning your comrades. For the first time, this wolf-like captain was speaking to them in a pleasant manner. Behind him, there was a red round sunset bursting out a bloody glow. He was wearing desert combat camouflage and standing high on a weathered stone that might collapse at any time. The Type 95 rifle pressed against the instep of his feet and supported it with one hand. With the sun blurring his facial features, he was like a demon that walked out of a sea of blood. He was so fierce, but he made them feel very at ease. Although they felt at ease, they felt a little awkward. Why did he always speak so harshly? It was as if he thought that there would be cowards among them who would abandon their comrades and run for their lives. On the spot, the comrade with the code name 27 risked being severely punished and said loudly, "I swear to live and die with my comrades. I will never do something like abandoning my comrades." That's right. I will never do something like that. Don't look down on us. Q King, just you wait. Their captain had personally told them not to call him captain because they were not qualified to call him captain yet. The reason was simple. None of them had been personally recognized by him. None of them were official Special Forces soldiers in the brigade. They were all trainees. F*CK. He had been training in the team for more than 2 years, but in the end, he was still an intern. He could only resign himself to his fate. Those who had not been on the battlefield and had not really fought with real guns and bullets could not be considered as soldiers. The reality was very cruel, and they had nothing to say. Now, there was a new mission, a chance to prove that they had the ability to stay and become a real member of the Snowfield Brigade. The veterans were overjoyed, and the Special Forces soldiers who were still trainees were even more surprised. They had been dealt a blow by Xia Jinyuan every day. Q King, what about us? Should we wait for further orders? Someone cautiously and expectantly asked in the channel. As soon as this was said, the entire channel instantly went silent. The sun was shining brightly in the Gobi Desert, and the wind was strong as well. The strong wind brushed against her face, and it hurt a little. Even when the wind and sand blurred her eyes, she didn't raise her hand to wipe her eyes. She just waited for Q King's reply. Chapter 4477. A very soft and cold laugh came from the silent channel. The captain, who had already shown them his power, said calmly, "Are you afraid of death?" "I'm afraid of death, but I'm more afraid of letting down this camouflage uniform." A trainee answered Xia Jinyuan on behalf of himself. He answered honestly, "No one is not afraid of death. I believe in Q King, and I believe that the veterans are the same. We're afraid of death, so we have to come back alive every time. Just like Q King said, we can't waste resources." G3 looked at the captain who stood beside him a few seconds ago and saw a satisfied smile in his cold expression. He got up and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Not bad, you have some awareness." Xia Jinyuan answered this group of trainees. They were all soldiers in his team and his comrades. Sacrifice was very close to them, and he only wanted them to live until they retired and had many children and grandchildren. The sacrifice was big enough. A few more of them would not make a difference. Therefore, they had to practice well and come back alive. "Then can we participate in the operation? Look at your performance. Are you all free? Do you want to play Eagle Catches Chicks again to stretch your muscles?" Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who sounded quite easy to talk to just a second ago, suddenly became fierce. After he finished speaking, the veterans and trainees in the channel all shut up and did not ask any more questions. The veteran with many years of experience told the trainees seriously, "Our captain is famous for being difficult. The more you ask, the more he won't say anything. You guys are still too inexperienced. Don't ask too much in the future. If there's anything, he will naturally tell you." The trainees, who were taught, nodded obediently. In the Gobi Desert, in order to fight for mobility, big cats turned into little kittens and became obedient. Xia Jinyuan was confident that he could lead them to practice. Otherwise, he would not have asked them to pack up in advance and wait for orders. The atmosphere in a military conference room was quite solemn. All the people present in the conference room were military ranks above 2 bars. In the face of Commander-in-Chief Xia's instructions, all of them nodded slightly in agreement. 3 of our soldiers are suspected to have been kidnapped by criminals and brought to the northernmost region. According to the current information we have, they are about to start a new riot. Before the riot, our army must eliminate all members of the criminal organization. We must use force to deal with all criminals who destroy the peace of the country and show no mercy. In the meeting, Commander-in-Chief Xia conveyed the determination of the leaders of the Great Hall. In the face of criminal organizations, they must not tolerate them and fight back directly. With the order from the military headquarters, Xia Jinyuan quickly received the latest news. They would cooperate with the Special Service Squadron of the Border Corps to complete a carpet search in the northernmost region to eliminate all the criminals. "As you wish, all of you." Xia Jinyuan, Xia Jinyuan, and Xia Jinyuan. Each word was like a bullet, bang, 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 bang. Including Bai He, Ji Ke, and Qing Niao, there were a total of 16 people in this training. The 30 trainees were all present, so there were a total of 46 people. Criminals, 3 important targets. If you find them, kill them directly. No need to keep them alive. There are about 20 known criminals, all of whom are from the northernmost region. They have been instigated by the 3 important targets to become members of the criminal organization. Our main task is to assist the Special Service Squadron to eliminate the criminals. Do you understand? Understood. The orderly and powerful voices resounded throughout the Gobi Desert. Chapter 4478. It was useless to just understand. They had to be aware of the dangers that awaited them. Xia Jinyuan took a few steps forward. His eyes swept across all the Special Forces soldiers in front of him like a sharp sword. The strong wind in the Gobi Desert rolled him up, and his bloody voice penetrated into everyone's ears. They have illegal guns in their hands. The bullets in the guns may hit one of you. Now, even if you go in alive, you may not come back alive, including me and the veterans. No one can guarantee that they will come back alive. Before the troops were dispatched, as the captain, he cruelly pointed out all kinds of things in the war, which had a certain impact on the trainees who had never carried out a real bloody mission. The fact was that they couldn't avoid it. If they did, they would be killed in the next second. The veterans rubbed the steel guns in their hands, and the trainees had different expressions on their faces. This was advice and a warning. It was telling them that as long as they were on the battlefield, even children were full of lethal power. The danger of war was everywhere, and the trainees on the battlefield had to bear it in mind. For this operation, the three major areas A, B, and C will be blocked. No one is allowed to enter or leave the blocked areas until the mission is over. During the blockade, bullets and bombs may appear at any time, and you may die at any time. Finally, I ask you, are you ready? Xia Jinyuan, standing under the scorching sun, asked them very calmly. Even his voice was very calm. If you're ready, go. If not, stay and wait for orders. If you follow me out, I'll have to bring you back alive. That day became the most unforgettable day for the trainees. They finally understood why the veterans trusted their captain so much. It turned out that their captain was not as cruel as he appeared to be. All his cruelty came from the fact that he wanted all of them to live. He wanted them to come out alive and go back alive. No one flinched and no one answered. They answered their captain with straight backs and fearless eyes. Prepare the horses and prepare for the fierce battle. Prepare for the battle. Let's go. In the blazing sun, the young captain gave the order. His voice was sonorous and powerful and could make a few holes in the ground. The captain of the Snowfield Brigade, Xia Jinyuan, codenamed Q King, led the team to the northernmost area at the fastest speed. At the same time, the Special Service Squadron of the 6th Detachment of Akela City set off. The Special Service Squadron of the 6th Detachment in Akela City was a special squadron. All the officers and soldiers were on the front line all year round. Now, they couldn't remember how many major terrorist incidents they had dealt with. This was a group of heroes, and it was also the group with the highest sacrifice rate. Every time they sent out their troops, it was a matter of life and death. The military order was issued to the Snowfield Brigade that was training in the Gobi Desert. At the same time, the officers and soldiers of the 6th Detachment Special Service Squadron in Akela City also received the latest order. They knew before the Snowfield Brigade that there was going to be a fierce battle. Gripping their loaded guns tightly, every special agent ran up and jumped into the bulletproof troop carrier, heading north. This time, 50 people were dispatched, and it was a first-class operation. Not long after they boarded the bulletproof troop carrier, the platoon leader received the latest news that 3 Special Forces soldiers from a certain unit had been kidnapped by an outlaw disguised as a taxi and taken to the northernmost part of the country. Now, the 3 captured Special Forces soldiers had become 3 pairs of eyes for this operation, reporting the latest news to the outside world at any time. At the same time, they learned that a special force that had entered the Gobi Desert for training half a month ago had assisted them in completing this mission. Chapter 4479. The platoon leader had his reservations at first. He was afraid that these Special Forces soldiers didn't have actual combat experience. But after learning that they were all Special Forces soldiers who had fought on the front lines and had blood on their hands, the platoon leader was relieved. Reinforcements were a good thing, but he was afraid that reinforcements would be inexperienced. The 2 groups of soldiers headed north. Yi Qian, Ji Ke, and Bai He were still moving forward. The scenery on both sides was getting more and more desolate. Finally, there was no road. The car finally stopped. The taxi driver took out a pistol and pointed it at Bai He, who was sitting in the passenger seat. He no longer hid his cold and fierce gaze. "Get out." Bai He pressed himself against the car door. The tall man revealed a panic that made Yi Qian try his best to hold back his laughter. The Snowfield Brigade was a very special force. Not only could all the Special Forces soldiers carry guns and kill enemies, but when it came to acting, they were all graduates of film schools and were professional actors. Bai's acting was very vivid. He acted out the horror of an ordinary person facing a gun. It started with his eyes wide open, followed by his facial expression, and then his body language. He pressed himself against the car door like a startled bird. At the same time, he tried to form a sentence that sounded like he was leaking air. Gun, 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 F***CK, At the same time, GK also shouted F***CK gun in horror. Then, she was so scared that she didn't say anything else. Yi Jian didn't know how to react in the face of her two comrades who were suspected to have graduated from the film academy. Acting like them? She would be even more unnatural. She had already died once. She really didn't know how to act. She was better at being expressionless. Then she would be expressionless. She hugged her head with both hands and asked GK shakily, "What's wrong? Where are we?" Don't forget, she was sleeping in the car. It was normal for her to ask where they were now. There were messy footsteps outside the car. Then, someone pulled open the car door. It was very rough and violent. Get out, all of you, get out." A stiff and awkward Mandarin was heard. Clang! The car door was pulled open by brute force. A pair of hands clasped Yi Jian's wrists and dragged her out of the car while yelling. The white crane and the weaving sparrow were also dragged off the carriage. A group of bearded men wearing long gray robes and headscarves of the same color surrounded the three of them. Yi Jian glanced at them out of the corner of his eye. There were 7 of them in total, and all of them were armed with rifles. They were all simple, cheap, and average AK-47s. After taking a closer look, Yi Jian saw some clues. They didn't have the original AK-47S in their hands. All of them were imitation AK-47S that could be bought for $100 each. Among the 7 people, 3 of them were men between 30 and 40 years old, 2 of them were around 20 years old, and the other 2 were so young that their faces were green and their eyes looked fierce, but they didn't have any intimidating power at all. They were only 16 or 17 years old. They didn't know what kind of road of no return they had taken. They held their AK-47s very proudly. One of them pressed the muzzle of the gun against Weaving Sparrow's head and deliberately made a bang sound to scare Weaving Sparrow. Weaving Sparrow, who was suspected to be from the Film Academy, was really scared. Yi Jian saw his knees buckle, and he fell straight down the uneven dirt road. GK's reaction successfully amused the 16 or 17-year-old boy. In the empty mountains, the boy let out an arrogant ha-ha laugh. He didn't know that the man he was pointing his gun at was actually a Special Forces soldier. A Special Forces soldier who had killed countless terrorists. Chapter 4480. White Crane struggled and yelled, "What are you doing? Let me go! Let me go! Stay still and don't move." His struggle was met with a violent beating from the 3 criminals. They smashed the fake AK-47s into White Crane's back until Weaving Sparrow roared, "Let go of my friend! Let go of him!" Ugh! One of the youths revealed a strange and vicious smile. His eyes were beautiful, like the light blue sky, but his actions were so vicious that it destroyed the clarity in his eyes. He used the muzzle of his gun to hit Weaving Sparrow's abdomen, not once, but repeatedly. "Shut up, you disgusting bastard." He spoke fiercely in the local language until GK's entire body tensed up and she cried out in pain. Only then did he reluctantly withdraw his hand. A middle-aged man with a long beard beside him laughed and patted the assailant on the shoulder. He muttered a few words and took out a handful of money and handed it to the assailant. Yi Jian and Weaving Sparrow didn't understand, but White Crane heard every word clearly. And because of that, White Crane's calm eyes narrowed. F***CK. Something had gone wrong. Violent criminals were violent criminals, but the ones who kidnapped them weren't violent criminals, but F***CK, human traffickers. Human traffickers? He, Qing Yao, and Weaving Sparrow were kidnapped by human traffickers? Yi Jian and Weaving Sparrow were also dumbfounded. What did they mean by taking out money? What did the taxi driver mean by thanking them profusely after receiving the money? Why couldn't they see the reason? Guns, money. For the first time, Yi Jian felt that his IQ wasn't high enough. Why did they take out money? What did they say? Weaving Sparrow asked her comrade, White Crane. Only White Crane, who could understand the local language, could answer her question. "If I said we were kidnapped by human traffickers, would you believe me?" White Crane said, with a blank expression. The air around the 3 of them froze and slammed into their faces. It hurt a little. "I was kidnapped by human traffickers?" Weaving Sparrow, who had been beaten to the point of bleeding at the corner of her mouth, asked with a blank expression. White Crane nodded. That's right, my condolences. Yichien looked at the two, closed his eyes, and whispered, It's a little embarrassing, brother. A little embarrassing? No, no, no. It was so embarrassing that the two of them even thought of retiring. Special Forces soldiers kidnapped by human traffickers? Isn't that embarrassing? Isn't that embarrassing? Yi Qian said again, If they're human traffickers, why do they have guns? Two groups. Weaving Sparrow's eyes lit up as she searched for a hole in the ground. He was so focused on the human traffickers that he completely forgot that there was still a group of people with guns. A human trafficker is a human trafficker, and a violent person is a violent person. So it's not too embarrassing. The White Crane comforted the two of them. White Crane nodded slightly in agreement. The three of them didn't think about their own safety when facing the violent armed men, but rather, they didn't feel embarrassed. It was a strange scene. The taxi driver took the money and patted the armed youth's shoulder. He whispered a few words to the youth, who nodded and said a few words. Chapter 4481. The taxi driver walked to the other locals who were holding guns and said something in a low voice. They all nodded to show that they understood. The taxi driver didn't stay for long. He said a few words to the leader of the group and stared coldly at the three people he had brought with him. Soon, he drove away. The middle-aged man patted the young man's shoulder and smiled. You're a warrior. Your family is proud of you. The violent young man immediately put away his ferocious expression and became extremely pious. He knelt on both knees and prayed to the north. His sincere worship was praised by the adults. The middle-aged man took the opportunity to preach to the other young man. Yi Qian and Ji Ke couldn't understand because of the language barrier. The only one who could understand was Bai He. His eyes flashed coldly. He understood. The middle-aged man was preaching to them that everything they were doing was doing good to stop evil. Everything was right, in the guise of preaching hypocrisy. In order to achieve unspeakable goals, they would bewitch the young people anytime and anywhere to use violence and slaughter as a pass to enter heaven, so that the young people would become their tools and commit heinous crimes without any scruples. They didn't do good, nor did they stop evil. They were brainwashed by extreme ideologies and became mindless machines that could kill at any time. The young man's sky was no longer carefree and clear. It was only gray and blood red, and he was proud of it. Bai narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. He remembered the middle-aged man who had tempted the young man. In order to prove that he had a brave heart, the educated young man kicked Ji Ke, who resisted the most fiercely. He used punches and kicks to prove himself to the middle-aged man. Ji Ke didn't fight back. His hands were pinned behind his back. He arched his back and allowed the young man to attack him. His fists hit his face and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. His legs kicked his legs and abdomen again and again. Just by listening to the sound, one could tell how much strength was used. He didn't resist and only struggled to avoid being hit. His lowered head in pain hid the bloodthirst of a Special Forces soldier, making everyone think that the three of them were ordinary tourists. As for the camouflage bags in their hands, they had thrown them on the ground before boarding the car. They didn't even bring them with them. Yi Qian looked at the youth who had completely lost his conscience. Her dark eyes were bone-chilling. She was the victim in this deal and also a witness to the crime. Now, she was going to be the executor of the crime. The violent youth beat the Weaver Sparrow for at least 5 minutes before he was stopped by the middle-aged man. At this moment, the Weaver Sparrow and the White Crane seemed to be frightened and did not dare to struggle. There was no turning back. Since they had arrived, they had to walk all the way. They were willing to step on thorns all the way. Yi Qian's chin was forcefully pinched, and she was forced to raise her head. She saw in the other party's eyes that she was like a product being sized up, waiting for the best price to be sold. It should be worth quite a bit. The other party nodded in satisfaction and said a lot to the two people who were holding her down. She became the only one who was not beaten up. The White Crane, whose hands were tied behind her back, touched Yi Qian's hands and its slender fingers gently wrote on her fingers. They kidnapped us for another deal. Before the deal is completed, we shouldn't be in any danger. Don't worry, GK and I'll be fine. Chapter 4482. Yi Qian listened to these people speaking in a language she couldn't understand, but she understood what they were saying through Baihe's translation. Her fingers moved slightly, and she wrote to Baihe, "We'll be fine. They'll be fine. The ones in trouble are these criminals." One of the armed criminals left, and Unworthy drove an old pickup truck. After the three of them got into the pickup truck, they continued to head north. Further north, they entered the hinterland of the north, and continued north until they reached the border of another country. The hinterland of the north didn't have a dirt road for cars to pass through. Along the weathered dirt road, they entered the hinterland of the north, into the dangerous heart of the hidden mountains. There was almost no greenery in the northernmost part of the mountain. All that could be seen were gray mountains. The trees that grew in the mountains were short and sparse. Even their leaves were gray. The clear sky and the gray mountains were two completely different colors, yet they outlined the most beautiful scenery. The three of them were tied up like animals and sat in the middle of the back seat. The criminals with guns sat around them, their cold eyes glancing at them from time to time to prevent them from escaping. At the same time, two cleaning staff at Accra Airport handed the three unclaimed camouflage bags to the front desk of the airport service. It was common to lose luggage at the airport. Without thinking much, the staff at the front desk opened them as ordinary camouflage bags, trying to find the information of the passengers who lost their luggage. Until they found 3 IDs from the 3 bags. The staff at the front desk looked at them for a while, then contacted the security center with a walkie-talkie to report the matter. 2 military IDs, 1 military academy ID, 3 sets of desert combat camouflage uniforms, 3 pairs of desert combat rubber canvas boots, and 3 plane tickets. The highly vigilant staff at the security center immediately handed them to the airport police. As soldiers, they couldn't be careless enough to lose their own luggage, let alone 3 people losing their luggage at the same time. If it wasn't intentional, then it was intentional. Why was it intentional? The police recognized the 3 people on the IDs and asked where they found them. They quickly retrieved the surveillance footage to look for clues. Recently, Accra City was not very peaceful. Almost all the police were mobilized, and even the armed police were patrolling in plain clothes, especially in places with high traffic. Now that 3 soldiers suddenly lost their luggage at the same time, the police immediately knew there was a problem when they saw the luggage. The surveillance footage was quickly retrieved. The 3 of them first met in the airport lobby, then walked out of the lobby together. Get the surveillance camera number 6. When the person in charge of the security center saw the 2 of them walk out of the hall, he immediately knew which surveillance camera was closer. Number SIXS surveillance footage was immediately pulled out. In less than a minute, 3 figures could be seen. A taxi stopped. When the door was opened for the first time, the taxi door was not opened. Through the surveillance footage, it could be seen that the 3 people were obviously a little confused. However, the taxi didn't drive off immediately. After about 10 seconds, the door opened again. This time, they could get in the car. At this moment, the man who pulled open the door to the front passenger seat moved his right hand. The male and female soldiers who were sitting in the back almost nodded their heads at the same time. They seemed to have communicated with each other. They should have noticed something strange. The officer in the co-pilot seat reminded his comrades. They are very vigilant, but why are they still attacking when they know that there is a problem? If only we had informed the duty officer at that time, we could have controlled the driver immediately. They were clearly controlling the driver, but they didn't do anything, nor did they ask for help. It's very likely that they noticed something and got into the car normally. Chapter 4483. Looking at the monitor, several police officers with serious expressions lowered their heads in disgust. Getting in the car and closing the door, the luggage that was supposed to be in the car was all put aside. They really weren't worried about being taken away at all. Through the video, it was certain that the 3 soldiers had noticed something was wrong with the driver. 3 seconds before getting in the car, They had secretly communicated with each other with hand gestures. Immediately pull up the driver's personal information and contact the traffic police to lock onto the car and track it all over the city. Several police officers immediately took action after watching the monitor. There was no time to waste. The Iraq City police, who were already very efficient during this special period, were even faster this time. It took less than half an hour to lock onto the car's information and find out that the car was heading to the northernmost area. The police in charge of this matter felt a chill in their hearts. The northernmost, a forbidden place. It didn't take long for the police to receive the latest news. A special service squadron had already taken action, and the 3 soldiers had indeed deliberately boarded the car. The military had also taken action. The police officers who received the latest news were all relieved. They really didn't want another wave of trouble to arise. Now, they had the guts to drive to the airport and kidnap 3 soldiers. Their arrogance wouldn't last long. At most, there would be results in 3 days. The intentionally lost luggage was handed over to the police and would be returned when the 3 soldiers returned. It was 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was scorching their arms. 5 bulletproof personnel carriers were bumping along the gravel road. The wheels rolled up clouds of dust, and in the blink of an eye, they were dozens of meters away. The drivers were all veterans of the Snowfield Brigade, and their driving skills were superb. They could even drive through the Tibetan area's heavenly moat road, not to mention the border. The bulletproof personnel carriers had good performance and were far more comfortable than trucks. 13 veterans led 30 recruits all the way to the northernmost area. They followed the location provided by Weaving Sparrow the whole time, and the direction was quite accurate. The Special Police Squadron of Iraq City's 6th Detachment also moved forward according to the location provided by Weaving Sparrow. The 2 teams headed to the rendezvous point at the fastest speed. The terrain of the northernmost area was particularly complicated. Gray mountains and steep ridges rose and fell like a dormant dragon. During the day, the mountains and rivers were magnificent and shocking. At night, the starry sky was vast, and every star seemed to have been scrubbed clean, incomparably bright. There were very few people here, and the traffic was blocked. The ethnic minorities living here were almost completely cut off from the rest of the world. They had also become a fat piece of meat in the eyes of foreign forces. Inside the car, Xia Jinyuan seemed to have fallen asleep. No matter how bumpy the car was, he did not open his eyes. The driver of the V8 held the steering wheel with both hands, stepped on the accelerator, and sped forward. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the afternoon that they finally arrived at a gravel road not far away. For the sake of safety, all the vehicles that saw this area could not continue to pass through. All of them got off their vehicles and walked into the northernmost combat zone. The SWAT team of the 6th Detachment arrived an hour earlier than the Snowfield Brigade. They even camouflaged their bulletproof personnel carriers and waited for the arrival of the SWAT team. "Captain, all 5 cars are here." Through their binoculars, the special police officers hiding in the mountains saw 5 bulletproof vehicles that were the same as theirs, but of different colors. The troop carriers drove like sports cars and bumped along the way. That speed was exciting to look at. "Do you want to watch a little longer before we go out?" One of the special forces said in a low voice. It was obvious that he had some doubts about the special forces that had come to support them. This was not the mainland, and the SWAT team that did not participate in live ammunition anti-terrorism had to be careful here. "All you go out. We'll know at a glance whether or not they can do it." Chapter 4484. The captain, who had served for 14 years, was a member of the Cole clan. His name was a little long, and when translated into Chinese, it was 16 characters long. Even he couldn't count the number of anti-terrorism operations he had participated in. Half of the special forces in the 6 detachments were locals. This time, almost half of the 50 people were dispatched, and there were as many as 35 local special forces. Out of the 50 people, 5 stayed on guard, while the other 45 walked out of their hiding spots as the 5 bulletproof vehicles approached. They stood in 2 lines and waited for the special forces to get out of the vehicles. The special forces, standing in an open field, soon appeared in the line of sight of the V8 leader. They stared at the figure in front of them and called out to Xia Jinyuan, who had been resting with his eyes closed. Q King, a group of heroes. You live up to your name. They were still 100 meters away, but he could already feel the murderous aura. Xia Jinyuan opened his eyes and sat up straight. As the vehicles got closer and closer to the formation in front, as the captain, he also felt the murderous aura from his brothers in different systems. This Special Forces squadron was indeed admirable. They were at the forefront of domestic anti-terrorism. They were always on duty all year round and never took a break. They had participated in more battles, big and small, than the Snowfield Brigade. While the Snowfield Brigade fought against foreign terrorism, they fought against domestic terrorism. The most dangerous squadron. None of the cooks and secretaries are cowards. There are sacrifices almost every year. I'm afraid they won't take us seriously for the time being. Before seeing them, Xia Jinyuan definitely wouldn't take them seriously. He didn't think too much about it. He turned on the communicator, and his cold, metallic voice sounded in everyone's ears. Everyone, get ready to get out of the vehicles. Keep your spirits up. Don't embarrass my soldiers outside. After the order was given, the 5 vehicles were not far away from the special forces in front of them. The bulletproof military vehicles stopped 5 meters away. Xia Jinyuan opened the door and got out first. Then, he opened the rear door of the vehicle and completed the assembly as quickly as possible. The vehicles were at the back and the people were at the front. The special forces in combat camouflage stood on the gravel ground with murderous aura. They were like steel walls and had an oppressive aura. You have some experience. Looks like you've really been on the battlefield. It's good that you have some experience. The 3 combat police zones A, B, and C cover a wide area. We can't let any information leak. It was fine as long as he had something. He wouldn't be a burden. The Special Forces soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade sized up the Special Forces officers, and the Special Forces officers standing opposite them also sized them up. As they whispered to each other, their eyes gradually lit up with joy. They thought that the military would only send anti-terrorism special forces from the cities. It was not that they had any opinions about anti-terrorism special forces from the cities, but that they specialized in different areas, so their combat tactics were different. Now that they saw dozens of camouflage figures carrying guns on their shoulders and walking over in unison, the anti-terrorist special forces on the front line knew that they had been wrong. The soldiers sent by the military were all brimming with killing intent and guts. The squadron leader of the 6th Detachment also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When he learned that the military had sent special forces to assist, he was both happy and worried. He was happy that there would be backup, but worried that if a group of anti-terrorism special forces from the city came, how would they adapt to the mountainous area? The amount of worry he had before was equal to the amount of joy he had now. The bloody and murderous aura that assaulted his face could not fool anyone. It was an aura that only soldiers whose hands had been stained with blood would have. Their eyes were very sharp, shooting straight at people's eyebrows like bullets. Every step they took was as steady as a mountain, like a long sword unsheathed and unstoppable. The captains of the 2 sides shook hands and briefly introduced themselves. The captain of the Special Forces Squadron knew that his Chinese name was Tai, so he simply did not introduce himself too much. He greeted each other in a friendly manner, then shook hands with his comrades on both sides. Next, they divided the work and worked together to formulate their own strategies. Chapter 4485. The Snowfield Brigade's special forces were obviously not strong, and the equipment they took out made the 6th Detachment's SWAT team speechless. Wireless communication, satellite navigation, infrared equipment. It would be a lie to say that the SWAT team was not envious. Although they also had individual soldiers, they were far inferior to the special forces sent by the military. Judging from their equipment, they were also a frontline combat force. 13 of them were like a leopard coming out of the cage, and they could see the terrifying killing intent in each other's eyes. Before the combat deployment, Xiao Jinyuan briefly introduced their identities. After all, this combat deployment was fully commanded by the SWAT team, and the Snowfield Brigade was only there to assist. As an all-weather, all-sided, all-terrain special force, they were not suitable for this kind of search operation. The captain of the 6th SWAT team only listened to a few words, and his eyes were full of admiration. They were also in the frontline anti-terrorism operations, but they covered a wider area than the 6th Detachment, and they had been in Yunnan, Tibet, and the southern border. According to the current location, the 3 kidnapped soldiers have arrived at the northernmost area, point A of the abdomen. There are a lot of illegal weapons in this combat area, so be careful during the process. Our operation is very different from your previous operation. We need to fight close to the area, and not everyone in the combat area is weak. You are not suitable to be the vanguard. The vanguard will be the SWAT team of the 6th Detachment, and you will fight the encirclement. What do you think? The captain of the SWAT team would ask Xia Jinyuan before every deployment, and he would not immediately make a decision by himself. After all, they were different systems. The 6th Detachment belonged to the Armed Police System for internal operations, while they were the Army for external operations. Their systems were different, and it was better to be humble. Xia Jinyuan had no opinion. The Snowfield Brigade was inexperienced in internal anti-terrorism, and he brought the trainees here to practice, so he would not be the host during the whole process. He nodded and said, "No opinion. Our team will follow the arrangement." "Okay, then I will be in full command. Thank you very much for your cooperation." The captain of the platoon saw this with a serious expression and showed a very shallow smile. It would save a lot of trouble for the Army brothers to follow their arrangement. The captain's Mandarin was not very standard, but it did not affect communication. The local special police officers on the mission could speak Mandarin. They were all locals who joined the Army for peace and stability and were not afraid of death. The map was spread out, and the platoon leader started to arrange it as quickly as possible. Z7 Han Jing kept a close eye on Weaver Sparrow's position. The 3 major combat zones were a lockdown operation. In order to prevent the 3 major combat zones from not being able to link up and cause the operation to fail, they were divided into 3 groups and entered the 3 combat zones A, B, and C before moving together. Based on his years of experience in anti-terrorism operations, the captain of the SWAT team informed them of the possible dangers in advance so that the SWAT team would be mentally prepared. The veterans knew what was going on. The trainees were on the field for the first time. They held the steel guns in their hands tightly and listened attentively without missing a word. The sun gradually began to set in the west. After careful battle planning, the special police and special forces that were divided into 3 groups advanced towards the 3 combat zones. Xia Jinyuan divided the trainees into 3 groups. The veterans would lead the battle, while his group would participate in the rescue of GK, Bai He, and Qing Yao. Chapter 4486. This was going to be a fierce battle, but it was not as dangerous as the previous missions the veterans had carried out. After all, they were only providing support from the periphery and did not need to fight in depth. Xia Jinyuan was not too worried about the veterans. He was mainly worried about the trainees. Although they did not need to fight in depth, they were still fighting with live ammunition. No matter how worried he was, he had to let them fight. It had been 2 years. It was time for them to finish their apprenticeship. Han Jing, who was staring at the GPS, saw that the moving red dot finally stopped. He moved to the side of the SWAT officer and said, "Brother, we have entered combat area 37 kilometers away." The SWAT officer looked at Han Jing and whispered in surprise, "How do you know I'm a communications soldier?" They did not introduce themselves. "How did Lu Jun know?" Han Jing replied, "My eyes. Come, let's see if this is one of the combat areas." The SWAT officer did not ask how Lu Jun knew he was a communications soldier. He looked at him and nodded. "Yes, they have entered our combat area. As long as the GPS is still there, we can find them immediately." "Can you drive?" Han Jing asked again. 37 kilometers would take at least 4 hours. 4 hours was too long. This kind of thing had to be solved as soon as possible. "We could drive, but it's inconvenient. We are mainly worried about hidden sentries. If they are discovered by hidden sentries, they will run away faster than rabbits. We can't catch them. The SWAT officer's answer made Han Jing frown. Xia Jinyuan, who was talking to the SWAT officer, said, "Since it's inconvenient to drive, let's just walk." Then, he turned and asked Han Jing, "Where is the GPS?" Report. Han Jing ran over with a military bag. "It's 37 kilometers away from us. We can drive, but to prevent hidden sentries, we can only walk." The SWAT officer pointed at the GPS with a serious face. "The terrain here is complicated. After another 370 kilometers, we will enter the Aizu area, which is even more complicated. After crossing the Yukon River, we can escape the border. To prevent them from escaping the border, we need to hurry. 37 kilometers of walking would take at least 4 hours. For hours, it would depend on how GK, Bai He, and Qing Yao would react. With their abilities, their escape skills were excellent. If something happened, they could at least escape. If there were no other combat areas B and C, Xia Jinyuan would definitely choose to drive to combat area A." Once again, both sides confirmed the battle plan and immediately proceeded on foot. Xia Jinyuan wanted to let the trainees practice their skills as soon as possible, while the special forces wanted to get rid of all the targets as soon as possible to avoid any unexpected problems. However, at 4 in the afternoon, an hour after the two armies met, the original location of the 37-kilometer range began to change. Han Jing of Z7 was shocked. "Q King, position change, position change." Xia Jinyuan, who was on foot, said sternly, "Reposition." Xia Jinyuan was worried that the battle within the borders of other countries would become a battle outside their borders if they were to go another 370 kilometers deeper. The sudden change caught everyone off guard. No one had expected such a thing to happen. Looking at the rapidly changing position north, the armed police, who were only responsible for internal anti-terrorism, began to frown. The leader of the SWAT team, who was in charge of area, said to Xia Jinyuan, "If we keep moving north, we will probably cross the border. We can't fight across borders. Once we enter the territory of another country, the rescue will be up to you." If he was surrounded by veterans of the Snowfield Brigade, fighting outside the borders would not be a big deal. The main problem was that he only had E6 and Z7 as veterans with him. The other 10 were trainees. Chapter 4487. Now, it was difficult to gather the veterans, and the SWAT team had to be rearranged. There was only one solution: solve all the hidden dangers in combat area A, and then chase after them. Xia Jinyuan couldn't immediately lead the team to chase after Yi Qian and the other two. If they left, the SWAT team's deployment would have to be rearranged. Not only would it waste manpower and material resources, but would also cause the entire battle plan to fail. He could only cooperate with the SWAT team to complete the battle in combat area A, and then chase after them. If it took too long, he would ask the aviation regiment for help. Soon, the veterans, including G3 and K7, who had split up, all learned that Qing Yao and the other two were not in the combat area, in combat area A. Instead, they continued to head north, most likely out of the border. Hearing the news, all the veterans' faces changed. Xia Jinyuan, who was contacting the veterans through the satellite phone, said in a deep voice, "The three of them may not always be in disguise when they enter Keston. We can't rule out the possibility that they have to follow us into Keston." The latest news was reported to Major General Yang in the north. Major General Yang, who was answering the phone in his office, almost cracked the phone. "Okay, you will assist the SWAT team to complete the battle. I will coordinate with the aviation regiment first. After you assist in the mission, immediately catch up with the three of them in a helicopter. The military will contact all the border posts to complete the interception. If they were to enter Jistin, the three of them would be walking into a tiger's den without any weapons on them. Without any backup, the danger level would skyrocket. They could not be allowed to proceed any further and had to be stopped. However, there was still another problem. If the three Special Forces soldiers chose to continue to follow the extremists in Ajestan, even though they had the conditions to escape, Major General Yang, who had ended the call, looked uncertain. If that was the case, the three of them must have found clues that were closely related to their country. Then, should the border guards complete the interception? Major General Yang, who was halfway through the call, slowly put down the phone and contacted Xia Jinyuan again. He told him the problems he had just analyzed. Xia Jinyuan, who was still on the move, was silent for a while. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. If that's the case, our border guards don't have to complete the interception or even let them pass. The three of them will first enter Jistin to scout for information, and then I will lead the troops in to eliminate all the uncertain factors that destroy the stability of our country's borders. That would be another overseas battle. Major General Yang thought for a moment and nodded. Yes, the approval will be issued immediately. You should assist the Special Forces in completing the operations in various areas first. Understood. Xia Jinyuan's final answer was the decision for a mobile operation abroad. The battlefield could change in an instant. Even if the plan was flawless, there could still be unforeseen circumstances. For example, this battle had clearly been arranged, but the positioning had changed, resulting in the need to arrange a follow-up battle plan. Major General Yang acted quickly. He first contacted the aviation regiment, then contacted the various border outposts. When he contacted the border outpost closest to Kyrgyzstan, Major General Yang received an important piece of news. There were herdsmen at the border who went missing 4 days ago. Their families requested help from the soldiers at the outpost at 3 in the afternoon yesterday. The outpost sent soldiers into the Tian Shan Mountains to search for the 4 missing herdsmen. Missing at the border, abducted at the airport, and headed to the border. What if the 4 missing herdsmen were also abducted by extremists and brought into Kistian? What if the 3 kidnapped Special Forces soldiers had no choice but to follow them into Kaistan? Chapter 4488. The report from the outpost made Major General Yang's expression grow colder and colder. If that was the case, the 3 kidnapped soldiers would definitely choose to enter Jistin. 10 minutes ago, Yi Jian, GK, and Bai He were driven out of the car. After being exposed to the sun for an hour, they saw the 2 youths who had left carrying an oil barrel with oil stains on the outside. The faint smell of steam wafted over, causing the hearts of the 3 of them to sink. Yi Qian watched as they poured the gasoline into the car's fuel tank. The corners of his mouth were dry and cracked from the sun. It seems that we need to continue driving. If we continue north, we won't be far from the border. What are they trying to do by kidnapping us to the border? Now that things had developed to this point, Yi Qian couldn't figure out. Should we continue to pretend? GK didn't want to accompany them anymore. It was fine if they knew what they were trying to do, but now they were completely clueless. Moreover, they were accompanied by female soldiers Qing Yao. If they continued, he was worried that things would get worse and worse. We have to follow them closely. They won't just kidnap the 3 of us. There must be others. We have to figure out what they are trying to do. Bai didn't plan to give up. The more confused they were, the more serious the problem was. Human traffickers, kidnappers, violent people, money transactions. It was like a giant invisible net. If they didn't tear this net apart, there would be others who would suffer. Yi Qian agreed to continue following them. His thoughts were the same as Bai He's. From 6:50 a.m. to 4 p.m., they had been acting with these people for more than 9 hours. Since they were already in the act, they might as well find out the truth. But there was still a problem. Yi Qian, whose throat was so dry that it was smoking, said hoarsely, "There is another possibility. If they kidnap us in Ajestan, what should we do?" Good choice. If King Q finds out that the 3 of us are heading to the border, he will also guess that we will enter Jistin. The border outpost will be on high alert. We will choose to leave. If nothing changes, we will choose to follow them into Jistin. It had to be said that the tacit understanding between Major General Yang and the entire Snowfield Brigade was amazing. There was no communication, just based on the tacit understanding they had developed over the years. They thought of the problem almost at the same time. Yi Qian did not raise any more questions. The three of them continued to pretend that they were unable to retaliate and chose to wait and see. The pickup truck started up again, and the three of them, who had been exposed to the sun all this time, got in the car again. As the engine rumbled, the shabby pickup truck that looked like it was about to fall apart continued to drive along the riverbed towards the depths of Tian Shan Mountain. There was a small village on the other side of the river. That was the Special Police Operation Area A. The pickup drove for about an hour from the riverbed to a recently built road paved with stones. When they saw the number marks on the road and the boundary point that they were about to reach, the three people who were shaken by the bumps exchanged glances secretly. Whether or not he would follow them into the territory of Jistin would depend on how alert the sentries were. At the northernmost border was the Yukirch River, and there was a steel bridge over the river. On the other side of the steel bridge was the border of Jistin. He raised his eyes slightly and looked at the mountains flying past, then looked at the guys who were sleeping. He said softly, "It's more than 700 kilometers from Akala City to Bustling Border Defense Company. Bustling Border Defense Company is a seasonal sentry post. If you go further, you will be at the border of Jistin. Be prepared to illegally enter the border of other countries." Chapter 4489. Weaver Sparrow heard Bustling Border Defense Company quickly say, "You used to serve in the old company. Let's see if there are any changes." He was more familiar with this place than Yi Qian and Weaver Sparrow. Before he joined the Snowfield Brigade, he served in Bustling Border Defense Company in 1996 and later joined the Snowfield Brigade after passing the selection. Several years later, he might reappear in the Bustling Border Defense Company. As for the changes, the white crane looked into the distance. The changes were too great. Back when he was in Bidan, the Border Defense Company did not have such a wide and fair road. There was only a very wide dirt road where the trucks went on strike. Now the road to the border was much smoother and more spacious. The biggest change was the increase in military strength at the border. The criminals who once crossed the mountains to enter China's territory were now basically unable to return. The pickup truck was still driving from day to night. On the other side, the trainees led by Xia Jinyuan finally had their first live combat. They assisted the special forces in clearing out the cancerous tumors in the combat area. From 5 in the afternoon to 11 in the evening, the three combat areas A, B, and C were fully cleared out, and Yi Qian and the other two were getting closer and closer to the border. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the three combat areas were cleared out. Z7 cut the location of entering Jistin and sent it back to the military. Yi Qian, Weaver Sparrow, and he were escorted by 7 criminals across the nameless mountains and into Jistin. Yi Qian had gone abroad twice. The first time was to rescue Case 7, and the second time was to enter the tiger's den and illegally leave the country. At 2 o'clock in the morning in China, a transport plane sent by the Army Corps picked up 46 special forces of the Snowfield Brigade and flew to the border between China and Jistin. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they finally arrived at the border between the towering mountains on both sides and a narrow path in the middle. This was already within Jistin's territory. It was also a necessary place to enter the gang's lair. The Republic of Jistin, established in 1991, was a landlocked country in Central Asia with an area of 199,900 square kilometers. The Tian Shan Mountains and the Pamir Alai Mountains stretched across the border. Yi Qian and the others crossed the Tian Shan Mountains to enter Jistin. It was very cold in the mountains at night, but the night sky was exceptionally clear. Looking up at the night sky, one could even see a bright Milky Way. The stars were so big that one could reach out and pluck them. Yi Qian had just raised his head to look at the night sky when a strong gust of wind came from behind him. Even though he knew that something was about to hit him in the back, Yi Qian did not dodge and took it head-on. What hit Yi Qian was the butt of a gun, and the person who hit him was still the same young man. Yi Qian took the blow and staggered forward a step before he was kicked down again. Everyone sit down, sit down. If you move, I'll beat you to death. Outside the one-line sky, the middle-aged man who spoke stiff Mandarin pointed a gun at Yi Qian's head. Using Yi Qian as a bargaining chip, he threatened GK and Bai He to sit down obediently. If they dared to run around, he would shoot them. The young man with the spear was even more ferocious than everyone else. He directly hit the white crane's abdomen with the butt of his spear and said harshly, "Sit down, sit down." This kind of punishment was nothing to the white crane. Even if it was during its daily training, it would still feel this kind of pain. After walking until they arrived, the three people who were sweating profusely sat down in a triangle with their backs facing each other. They deliberately moved closer to each other so that it would be easier for them to communicate. They said that we're here. It seems that this is the gang's lair. Bai was the first to speak. Among the 7 people, there's a Justani. The middle-aged man who led the whole journey might be an extreme criminal in Jistan. Chapter 4490. I was wondering why they were kneeling and kowtowing. GK gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Qian worriedly. "How's your back? Are there any major problems?" Yi Qian's hands were tied behind his back, but he could still move his shoulders. "It's fine, just a little bit of pain. Now that we're in Jistan, it'll be difficult for Captain Xia and the others to find us." Bai He was convinced by the young captain, who was 2 years younger than him. He chuckled softly. "With him here, there won't be any problems. We've been tracking him all this time. It's just a matter of time before he finds us. Before he finds us, we have to protect ourselves. Now that we're here, it'll be difficult to escape." Probably because they were already in Jistan, the 7 people were not as vigilant as before. They stood about 3 meters apart, making it easier for the 3 to communicate secretly. "I don't want to escape now. I just want to find out why they kidnapped us from so far away." GK frowned. Her light voice was filled with hostility. "To kidnap us out of the country? How big of a game are they playing?" The Republic of Jistan was a country with many extreme outlaws. From time to time, they would cause riots in the cities, especially during the election of a new president. Election. GK's eyes narrowed. She asked Yi Qian, "Have you seen the election of a new president?" "I have. It's still in progress. There are major riots in several cities because of the election." Military school students paid attention to such news, and Yi Qian was no exception. Yi Qian seemed to understand something. He frowned. "You're saying that kidnapping us has something to do with the election?" The connection is far-fetched. If the middle-aged man is an extreme outlaw and kidnapped us to create a riot, and in the end slandered our country, then it's not that far-fetched. After years of tacit understanding, Bai He immediately grasped the point that GK wanted to express. The creation of a dispute could not be just a dispute. There were often political factors involved. The extreme outlaws of the Republic of Jistan had always wanted to infiltrate our country, but they had been caught and killed by our country. After a long time, they had long been resentful. Now that the Republic of Kyrgyzstan was in the midst of an election, kidnapping Chinese people to create chaos in the city, and then spreading the news through the media would achieve the goal of slandering China. If they really want to do that, we don't mind spilling blood in Justin's territory. After Weaving Sparrow finished speaking, a sharp whistle sounded from the front. About 10 seconds later, a whistle echoed from inside. F***CK. There's even a secret code. GK spat coldly. Immediately after, the 3 of them felt a gun pointed at their heads again. They got up and walked towards the one-line sky. Yi Qian saw a brightly lit village at the foot of the mountain. It was the border village of the Republic of Kyrgyzstan, not much different from the border villages of China. The people living at the border of the 2 countries are the Hanu and Koer tribes. They speak the same language and even drink the water from the Tian Shan Mountains. Their living habits and religious beliefs are exactly the same. In the 1950s, the Hanu and Koer tribes in our country could still enter here to graze and intermarry. It looked close from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain, but there was still some distance. It was not until 5 o'clock in the morning that Yi Qian and the others arrived at the village that belonged to the Republic of Kyrgyzstan. As soon as the three of them entered the village, someone ran out from the village entrance and said a few words to the middle-aged man in the lead. Bai's mouth tightened. They wanted to lock up Qing Niao alone. Chapter 4491. Yi Jian, who had been dragged out and escorted to another place, made a gesture to Ji Ke and Bai He before leaving in a hurry, indicating that they should not make a move and wait for her to figure out the situation. She was taken away alone. Ji Ke's eyes darkened, and she couldn't help but step forward. Bai He held Ji Ke's wrist tightly. Don't move. Figure it out first. She's been separated from us. Don't let anything happen to her. Ji Ke was anxious. It was fine if the three of them were together, but now Qing Niao was separated. He was worried that if something happened to Qing Niao, they wouldn't be able to help her in time. Bai lowered her head and whispered, "They want to use her to threaten us. As long as we listen, she will be fine." These people thought that the three kidnapped people couldn't understand what they were saying. They never thought of avoiding them when they communicated. It was very convenient for Bai He to keep getting useful information, including why they had to separate Qing Niao. Ji Ke was slightly relieved. Yi Qian, who was alone, memorized the way into the village under the starlight. After walking for about 15 minutes, she was brought to a small courtyard and pushed into a mud house with a welded iron door. The iron door opened with a bang. Before Yi Qian entered, she heard a few screams from inside. They were the screams of young girls. Yi Qian, whose hands were tied, was startled. Besides the three of them, could there be other Chinese tourists who were kidnapped to Kyrgyzstan? Go in. With a hard push, Yi Qian fell into the dark mud house without any sunlight. The iron door closed again with a bang. Yi Qian took a while to adapt to the darkness of the mud house. It wasn't completely dark. At the top of the mud wall, there was a small window that only children could crawl through. The sunlight refracted through the small window and cast a trapezoidal light on the ground. It was this small light that brought a trace of light to the dark mud house, allowing Yi Qian to see the situation inside. Besides her, there were several young girls around 16 or 17 years old. They had big eyes and high noses. They were all Kyrgyzstan girls. They were very scared. Their eyes were full of fear. When they saw Yi Qian enter, they huddled together and shivered. He didn't know how long he had been locked up, but the room was filled with a nauseating smell. It was the smell of excrement. Yi Qian wanted to approach the 6 young girls, but as soon as she took a step, the 6 girls screamed again, scaring Yi Qian into standing still. She thought for a moment, then said softly and clearly, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm not a bad person. I'm also a student who was captured by them. Can you understand what I'm saying? Can we communicate?" If they weren't Chinese tourists, then they definitely wouldn't understand what she was saying. She spoke softly. Before the young girls could speak, Yi Qian stayed where he was and tried his best to show his goodwill. These girls had been traumatized, which was why they were so scared. He glanced to the side and saw a black embroidered hat. This was a small hat that the local girls liked. 6 girls, 7 flower hats. Yi Jian sat down slowly. Facing the girls who were trembling in fear, she said softly, "Can you talk? I was kidnapped by them. What about you? Like me, right?" The girls didn't answer. Their eyes were wide with fear. It seemed that other than screaming, they couldn't speak normally. Unable to gather any useful information, Yi Qian stopped talking. He sat down and looked at the girls quietly. They needed to calm down. He would ask about the situation later. Chapter 4492. Yi Qian couldn't gather any useful information right away, but Ji Ke and Bai He made some progress after they were sent in. They were sent to a room with 15 to 16 people inside. The cave was dark, and they could only vaguely see the figures inside. The two were also stunned. Why are there so many people inside? Damn it, they can't all be Chinese, right? They didn't have time to think, so they turned around and shouted at the door. "What are you doing, my friends? Where did you take her? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?" They needed to speak first to see if there were any Chinese people among the prisoners. No one outside answered the two of them, but four people suddenly rushed out and pounced in front of the two of them. A middle-aged Chinese man named Tavizia, who could speak the common language, was both happy and anxious. He said, Chinese border herdsman, Coles, kidnapped the four of us, kidnapped. Help us. The four people who rushed over spoke very stiff and strangely accented Han language. As they finished speaking, tears flowed out of their eyes. GK and Baihe's faces instantly sank. There really were Chinese people who were kidnapped. They didn't come in vain. Don't worry. Speak slowly, speak slowly. The two of them steadily supported the four-coal herdsman who was kidnapped to Jestin. Tavizio wiped his tears and said, Okay, speak slowly, speak slowly. Little by little, the white crane gathered useful information from their conversation. It learned that other than the four of them, the rest were all villagers of Jestin. They were not willing to follow the orders of the Jestin extremists and were betrayed by their acquaintances and finally locked up. We need to communicate with them. Bai listened to the villagers and quickly said to GK, If Q King doesn't find us, we need to figure out the situation here first, then find a way to escape and find Qing Niao. As for the four of them, we need to bring them back to our country. GK nodded gently. I'm worried that Qing Niao will come out. Her low and gentle voice was full of worry. This is not our country. It will be very troublesome. He wanted to resist just now, but Qing Niao stopped him. From her eyes, he could see that she didn't want to see them get beaten up again. Actually, when these people's fists landed on his body, it really didn't hurt much. Sparrow Weaver's eyes were cold and sharp with the corner of her mouth cracked. She slowly said word by word, As long as we meet up with Q King, none of those bastards will be able to escape. I'm guessing that Qing Niao is safe for now. Let's figure out the situation in that village first. Even if Q King brings his troops over, we can immediately report the situation in that village. It didn't take long for the villagers to surround the two of them. Judging from Weaving Sparrow's words, they could tell that the two of them were from the Middle Kingdom. To think that a Middle Kingdom villager would be captured by the outlaws of their village, the villagers couldn't believe it. Yi Qian was unable to communicate with the imprisoned girls, but the Weaving Sparrows and White Cranes were able to communicate smoothly. The villagers of Kaistan did not know how to speak at all, but they were anxious to express something. They spoke their own language while trying to convey what they wanted to say. The vigilant White Crane didn't reveal that she could understand the two languages. Using this method, she quickly gathered all the useful information. First of all, they were all villagers from a village on the border of Jestin. Some were betrayed by their family members, some resisted, and some tried to escape. There were 5 different families. Chapter 4493. The 5 families weren't the only ones who were imprisoned. They belonged to the families that seriously resisted in the village, which was why they were imprisoned. Their daughters were also detained. One of the daughters was dragged away by her brother. He learned that the girl was tied with a row of bombs by her brother and didn't know where she was sent to. The girl's mother covered her face with both hands and cried loudly. The girl's father hugged his wife, and tears flowed out his eyes as well. They never thought that one day their son would send his sister away with his own hands. They didn't know where she went. They didn't need to know where she went. It was a place where she could never return. They knew, they all knew. The mother covered her face and cried softly. There were 2 women who kept comforting her. Their daughters were also not by their side. The crying mother was helpless. She couldn't stop what was happening. When she heard that the son she raised personally tied the bombs to his sister, her world collapsed at that moment. She begged Allah to save her lost son and her poor daughter. She begged day and night, even if she had to give up her life. Allah will protect us. Nothing will happen to our children. Allah will protect us. Another couple who were also separated from their children kept comforting the crying mother. They placed all their hopes on Allah, hoping that Allah would see their piety and save them. GK heard the clenching of his fists. These bastards, wherever they went, they would bring nightmares. Although the injured in front of him were villagers of Jistin, GK was still angry. F asterisk King Bullsh asterisk T about doing good and stopping evil. They were clearly doing evil and destroying human nature. Such a big thing happened, but the Jistin military didn't take any action? Didn't they send troops to deal with it? GK spat out a mouthful of bloody foam and said fiercely, "Let's stabilize this place first. Don't give the game away. Just you wait, bastards. Kill them all. We have to deal with them. Don't let them harm the countries." He said softly. The veins on the back of his hand were bulging as if they were about to burst out of his skin. He spent a lot of effort to suppress the anger in his heart. Tavigia pointed at himself as he spoke in stiff Mandarin. "They are all good, good. You are not good." He supported GK with both hands and made a gesture similar to a blessing. Even the corner of GK's mouth was broken. He believed that GK's injuries were the most serious. GK looked at him and listened attentively. Tavigia from the Core clan tried his best to gesture and said word by word, "We have to run back to the Heavenly Mountain, run. We have to hurry. Tomorrow night, we have to run tonight." He then pointed to the village in Jestin. "They're locals of Jestin, so they'll be fine. They're locked up, so they won't be in danger. I'm not bringing." When it came to the complicated part, Tavigia, who had kidnapped them, used their own language. The villagers who understood him nodded in agreement. That's right, that's right. They were all villagers here. Nothing would happen to them. The captured Chinese people were different. The Chinese people would be dragged out to die. Just like the good neighbor's daughter, they would be tied to a bomb and left for the big city. "Oh Allah, please forgive the innocent Chinese." GK and Bai looked at each other before Bai asked softly, "Have the four of you ever planned to escape?" Chapter 4494. Yes, they have guns, but they don't dare to. We have to run now, and we will leave the day after tomorrow. We will leave with bombs. We will run tomorrow night. If we don't run, we will die. Wait, Tavigia said excitedly. He then pulled a Jestin villager and said, "Hey, help us. Run." The Jestin villager bowed and said a few words of blessings. He then swept the ground with his feet to sweep away the weeds and debris. He then picked up a straw and started to draw on the dusty ground. He drew a route for the white crane and the weaving sparrow to escape. After they left, they would run along a small mountain path towards the Tian Shan mountain range. It would be difficult to find them if they ran into the Tian Shan mountain range. They could also go to the border to find the soldiers stationed there. After he finished drawing, he looked at the Chinese people who were kidnapped and said to Tavigia in a serious tone, "Remember this, I will help you run. Don't bring anyone here. It is very dangerous. You will die." It was easy to understand what he meant. After they escaped, they should not come back, and they should not bring anyone here. It was too dangerous here, and they would die if they brought anyone here. Tavigia immediately translated it to the weaving sparrow and white crane in the common language. When the middle-aged man was drawing the route, the other Jestin villagers consciously stood aside. Some of them even stood at the door and watched. He memorized the escape route and asked Tavigia in a deep voice, "Please help me ask, did they take any Chinese people out?" "No, it was the people in their village who were taken out." The middle-aged man's voice suddenly became more sorrowful. He looked at the Jestin villagers who helped them escape. Their relatives did not come back. They might be dead. He looked up and saw the couple who had been praying to Allah looking at him. After they were discovered, the couple's eyes narrowed, and they continued to comfort the other villagers. He looked away, and his expression was a little cold. However, he did not completely trust the Jestin villagers. He had seen too many anti-terrorism incidents. He once saw foreign soldiers helping a woman who was holding child. In the end, the three of them were blown up, and their body parts were scattered all over the sky. It did not trust everyone, but the white crane trusted the middle-aged man from Jestin, who was determined to help them escape. One of the paths that the man had drawn was the path that they had just taken, and he had also drawn a sliver of sky into the village. "Can you tell me how many criminals there are in total?" he asked in their language. The middle-aged man from Jestin widened his deep eyes. The middle-aged man from the Cole clan, Tavigia, was a little excited. He could speak their language. "Who are you?" Who are you? Tavizia was very excited. He looked at the white crane with a burning gaze. Are you the heavenly guardian? Before he could finish, the white crane interrupted him softly. Don't raise your head. Don't stand up. Let's talk slowly and softly. Sorry, I can't trust everyone. I want to know if there are many extreme criminals in the villages of your country. They even extended their hands into China. The white crane's attitude was calm as he communicated with Tavizia and the middle-aged man who helped them escape. The other party was very sincere, so he naturally had to show the corresponding sincerity to show respect. The middle-aged man from Justin's side. He sat down and leaned against the white crane. He spoke very close to the white crane. We have many extreme criminals here. They all say that they are warriors. Most of them are young people. My son was not one, but he changed. My brother was not one, but he changed too. Chapter 4495. The middle-aged man lowered his head, and his voice was even lower. No one can escape from here, and no one dares to come in here. The same goes for the kidnapped Chinese. You will be taken away the day after tomorrow. I know you want to live, and I want to help you leave here. Run to the depths of Tian Shan Mountain in your country, and find the soldiers in uniform. They are all your guardians. Don't tell them what happened. You can't tell them. If you tell them, maybe your guardians will come. I know they will come. Don't let them come. They should continue to protect Tian Shan Mountain and your border. They shouldn't die here. We don't want to see them die. It's enough. It's enough. The middle-aged man's voice was getting lower and lower. A drop of water dripped onto the dusty ground. The water droplet rolled into a ball of mud, just like how they felt at the moment. Bai's fingers trembled slightly. He said he saw people killed. Was he referring to the armed police of our country? Have they been sacrificed? He asked in a low voice, suppressing the cold sword will. No, not your guardians. They're a few of my old friends. The middle-aged man wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. The great sorrow he suppressed made his shoulders collapse. They shouldn't have died. They should have lived well. The white crane heaved a sigh of relief. The middle-aged man fumbled for a while and took out a small accessory. He held it tightly. We couldn't save them. We only took their accessories. This, please take it out for me and bury it in the direction of Tian Shan Mountain. I hope their souls can find their way home. Bai slowly reached out and took the accessory that had been well kept. It was very light, but it was so heavy that Bai's hands trembled. He nodded heavily and made a promise. Okay, I will take it out. I will bury it in the direction of Tian Shan Mountain. Thank you, thank you. They are lost. We can't find them. I hope the jade they wore before they died can guide them home, to heaven. The sky outside gradually darkened, but the dim sky was still so clear. It was like a mirror that couldn't hide the dirt of all things. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart calm. This was the border of Justin. It was also a crime, but the military of Justin did not pay much attention to this border, which made it a paradise for extreme criminals. At 6 o'clock in the morning, a vicious attack took place in a small county near the border of China. The border guards killed 12 criminals and successfully rescued a Cole tribesman from Justin who had a bomb strapped to his body. Everything that happened at the border did not reach Iraq. They cleaned up the scene and verified the number of people until the sky turned dark. The Kistan girl who was successfully rescued was so frightened that she fainted on the spot. The military doctor diagnosed that other than the shock, there was no other problem with her body. Around 7 o'clock in the morning, the girl from Kistan woke up. The first thing she did was to crawl up from the bed and kowtow to the doctor. The doctor was shocked. He quickly stopped the girl from doing anything and called for the sentinel on duty. Soon, the commander of the frontier defense camp arrived. Due to the language barrier, the commander specially brought a soldier from the Cole clan to the ward. Chapter 4496. 5 minutes later, the Border Defense Corps received an urgent call. Only then did they know that some herdsmen had been kidnapped by extremists from Kistan. The captain of the Border Defense Corps called the military without delay. Only then did he know that the military had taken action. The military's response was very subtle. Because they were entering the territory of another country to rescue people, they only said, "All problems will be solved." This sentence required a deep understanding of the bloody meaning behind the words. In a small village in Kyrgyzstan, a man with red eyes sat in a dark house with a corner of the wall illuminated by the morning sun, softly humming a sad song with tears in his eyes. Their loved ones were dead and would never come back. The heavenly mountain was covered in white snow. Eagles flew over the village, but their loved ones would never see the white snow of the heavenly mountain again. They would never wake up again. The low and long tone was so sad, flowing through everyone's heart like bone-chilling snow. My loved ones, you left us and went to a distant and cold place. My loved ones, the mournful tune echoed in the gloomy mud huts, and the bereaved Gistani villagers grieved like a child, clinging to one another, and weeping together. The crying was like a dark cloud shrouding everyone's heart. Even when it was dark, they still couldn't get over the sadness of their loved one's death. On the other side, the Kaistan girls who were detained also cried. Yiqian tightly held the hands of the Kaistan girl, Unyielding, who was the only one who could speak Chinese. She had been to school for 2 years in the border village and was the only girl who could speak Chinese. Yiqian held her hands tightly and whispered, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Unyielding. It's not your fault. Don't cry. It's not your fault." Unyielding, who was crying on Yiqian's shoulder, bit his sleeve with her teeth. Only in this way could she stop herself from crying out loud. Only in this way could she suppress the sound of crying. She returned to the village where she had not returned for 2 years. She returned to her home and saw her parents who she missed so much. She saw her brother who used to love her and her uncle. Not long after, her nightmare began. Her loved ones left one by one. Even though it had been so long, her nightmare was still going on. It would continue for the rest of her life. Yiqian hugged the core girl from Kaistan tightly. She blamed herself for failing to commit suicide twice and comforted her softly. Her dark eyes, which were fixed on the iron gate, were like shiny arrowheads, shining with a cold light. The footsteps outside were not the footsteps of one person, but the footsteps of 5 to 7 people. They were coming this way. The sensitive Kaistan girls all heard the footsteps. They hugged Yiqian and Unyielding tightly and stared at the iron gate with their beautiful eyes wide open in fear. They told the crying Unyielding that someone was coming. Unyielding, who was crying on Yiqian's shoulder, suddenly stopped. She raised her head, and her big eyes that seemed to be covered with dust suddenly lit up. She quickly said to Yiqian, "Yi, the chance to escape is here. You must escape." She didn't give Yiqian a chance to speak. She turned her head and spoke to the Kaistan girls in the local language. She needed them to create chaos and help Yiqian escape. The Kaistan girls obviously didn't expect this and were stunned for a moment. Chapter 4497. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. Yiqian didn't give the girls a chance to speak. She used her hands to push Unyielding, who was trying to help her escape. She said quickly and clearly, "Unyielding, listen carefully. Nothing will happen to you, and nothing will happen to me. Believe me. You must believe me. You must believe me. You will regain your freedom. You will be saved, and the villagers who were kidnapped with you will be saved. I swear on my life that all of us will regain our freedom." Unyielding was a stubborn girl. Otherwise, she wouldn't have refused to obey and committed suicide several times. Yiqian, who already knew what was going to happen to her, was not afraid. She even hoped that it would come sooner, so that she could have a chance to escape. But she was worried that the stubborn Unyielding would do something stupid again. She quickly comforted Unyielding before the Jestin outlaws approached. Unyielding shook her head. She didn't want anyone to come and save her. She didn't want anyone to come and save her at all. If it wasn't for her, her family wouldn't have died. Yi, after you escape, don't come back. Run to your country's Tian Shan mountain range. You will be, bang. The iron door was stepped open. Unyielding finished what she wanted to say at the last second. You will meet your country's guardian in the deepest part of the Tian Shan mountain range. The dazzling white light of the flashlight swept over the girls. A boy, who was only 16 or 17 years old, was holding a replica rifle. His young face was engraved with a ruthlessness that didn't belong to his age. He spoke fiercely in the local language. His tone was very, very fast, as if he was accusing something. Yi Qian recognized the boy who spoke. He was the one who beat Weaver K during the day. He was an extreme outlaw. The boy was very angry. He accused one of the girls of being disloyal to Allah. He accused the girl of not being willing to sacrifice her life. He felt ashamed to have such a sister. Faced with her brother's accusation, the girl with red and swollen eyes roared back even more angrily. She cursed loudly and used her loudest voice and greatest strength to cry and shout until her voice was hoarse. Yi Qian could not understand what they were saying at all. The boy who was scolding fiercely was pulled to the side, and an adult man said a few words in an impatient tone. Yi Qian, who was in the middle, immediately felt himself being protected even more tightly. The silent Ai Guli screamed, "No, no, you can't take her away." She spoke in Mandarin and then screamed back in the local language, using her meager strength to fight back. The rest of the Kistian girls shielded Yi Qian tightly. They could vaguely guess what these ferocious criminals wanted to do. They wanted to stop them with their own strength. It didn't work at all. Yi Qian was dragged away from their tight embrace and was rudely dragged out of the dark mud house. Her legs were tightly held by the Kistian girls. There was also a Kistian girl who threw herself at the outlaw who was holding Yi Qian. She screamed in her throat and used her hands to hit and claw at the outlaw. The strength of the girls was undoubtedly like throwing eggs against a stone in front of the adult men. They had no power to resist. A middle-aged man with a beard raised his foot and kicked a girl down. He cursed loudly. Then a female voice came from behind these people. Chapter 4498. The young girl's voice was full of viciousness. She had been standing at the back, blocked by several adult men, so that Yi Qian did not notice her at first. Now that she had shown up, her first action was to grab Aiguli's long braid. Her beautiful face was full of evil, and she waved her hand to slap Aiguli's face. Pa! A fierce slap came, followed by another paw slap. Aiguli's face was slapped twice. She should have said the most vicious words, so that Yi Qian, who was completely held by two adult men, saw Aiguli's originally pale face turn gray and become desperate. The girl who spoke laughed complacently. She was making fun of Aiguli. She was the former good friend of the imprisoned Kistan girls, but now she had become the master of her former companions' lives. She could pick up her rifle and shoot at her former companions. The laughter provoked the unyielding Aiguli, who fiercely glared at her former friend and used the loudest voice, the most vicious words to accuse her. You will definitely be condemned by the gods. You will definitely receive the greatest punishment. Aiguli, will use my life to curse you. Aiguli, who knew that she was powerless to resist, stared at the familiar face in front of her. Her beautiful eyes lost their luster, and all the luster was covered by darkness. There was no light, no hope. Yi Qian seemed to think of something, and her face, which had not spoken until now, burst with panic. She used all her strength and shouted loudly, "No! Aiguli! No!" Bang! Aiguli, who had tried to commit suicide several times, this time, her wish came true. She used all her strength to hit the round bolt on the iron door. Her strength was so great that the round bolt completely hit the hardest part of the human body, the skull. Blood dyed her black hair. This scene happened too fast. Only Yi Qian had a premonition that Aiguli would kill herself. Even if she broke free from the two adult men's restraint, it was already too late. The unyielding Aiguli leaned against the iron door and fell, her beautiful big eyes staring at Yi Qian, who was dragged outside and ran back. Her breath was very weak, so weak that her voice was like a newborn kitten, so weak that it would break at any time. "Run! Run! Aigili looked at the Chinese girl who was running towards her. Tears of blood flowed from her big eyes. "Run, don't come back, run, my friend. Don't come back, run, run. Get her, get her." Yi Qian's struggle made the torturers angry. They didn't care about Aigili's death. She was courting death, and it had nothing to do with them. The young boy smashed Yi Qian's shoulder with the butt of his gun and cursed fiercely. He cursed Aigili's disloyalty and the Han girl's resistance. The entire dark room was in chaos, and the shrill voices of the jesting girls pierced everyone's heart. They pounced on Aigili, shouting her name loudly. And in the last second of her life, her beautiful big eyes burst forth with the fire of annihilation as she stared at these familiar faces. "I curse you, Inner. Your soul will enter the inferno." Aigili used the last of her strength to complete the curse on her former partner, Inner. The snow-white flashlight shone on Aigili, and the dazzling blood reflected in Yi Qian's eyes. It also reflected the red eyes of Yi Qian, who was running over. Chapter 4499. How painful! Beautiful Aigili. She must be in a lot of pain. Her skull must be in a lot of pain. Silly girl, silly Aigili. Why did she have to do this? Why did she have to pay with her life for this group of damn things? She said that she would escape. She would definitely take them away. Silly Aigili. Why didn't she remember? Yi Qian, whose eyes were red, only had the fallen Aigili in his eyes. The moment he smashed the butt of the gun over, his cold gaze swept towards the young boy. It was their ignorance that killed the young girl, and the young boy in front of them was one of the executioners. Aigili let Yi Qian resist. She single-handedly grabbed the imitation AK rifle that the boy threw over, grabbed the butt of the gun, and pulled it towards her. The boy didn't expect that the kidnapped hostage would resist. He didn't even realize that he had already stepped into the door of death. He even shouted loudly, "Let go of your dirty hands. You deserve to die." Yi Qian's voice was as sharp as a knife, fiercely stabbing into the other party's heart. This ignorant boy suddenly felt a great danger. He subconsciously loosened his grip on the gun. He wanted to run away. He would never have the chance to run away again. He would never have the chance to speak again. Yi Qian, who attacked at lightning speed, used his elbow to hit his throat. Killing move, it was all killing move. All close combat moves were all killing moves. The young boy, whose hands were stained with blood, left only a painful and horrified ugh in the world as he walked down the path of no return. Plop! He fell to the ground with his head raised. His pair of equally beautiful eyes, but full of ignorance and fierceness, were wide open. He never thought that his life would end like this. He was completely unprepared to die. The scene became even more chaotic. No one thought that the kidnapped hostage would resist, and resist so fiercely. They were simply caught off guard. They didn't even realize that the fallen Kari Aji didn't trip, but died with his eyes open. The battlefield changed in an instant. It was impossible to follow the plan. Before Aigili killed herself, Yi Qian had a certain plan for her escape. If she was captured alone like the girl who was sent out by her brother, then she would do it on the way. If she was taken out by these people and intended to be executed directly, she would also make her move halfway. If Captain Xia and the others came over, she would work with them from the inside and clean up all the criminals. She had many planned ifs, and each of them had a good escape plan. However, the battlefield was constantly changing, and no matter how good the plan was, it could not keep up with the sudden changes. Yi Qian took the imitation AK rifle. Before he left, he glanced coldly at the girl who had spoken to Aigili. Under the flashing flashlight, Yi Qian remembered her face. She remembered it. She would definitely demand payment from her. The Kistian girls who were holding Aigili cried out in grief. They kept shouting and talking, and some girls kept wiping the blood that kept flowing out. Yi Qian ran away. After snatching a rifle, she ran away like a sandstorm in the night, wreaking havoc and violence. She ran away. She tripped Kari Aji, took his gun, and ran away. Chase after him. Don't let her get away. Take the gun back from her. Quick! The extreme criminals of Kistian didn't realize that the fallen Kariaji was already dead. Yichien ran away so fast that they didn't have time to pull up the fallen Kariaji. They all chased after Yichien. Chapter 4500. The last outlaw of Jistin turned his head and shouted at the dark corner. Anner, lock them all up. Quick, lock them all up. Don't let them escape. Anner, the girl who had cursed and made fun of Ieguli, came out from the corner again, pointed the gun in her hand at the girls, and shot at the ground with a bang. Get in. Don't let me kill you. Anner, whose conscience had long disappeared, had lost the innocence of a girl. She had become cold, ruthless, and a killing machine. The girls of Jistin stared at Anner with angry eyes. The seeds of hatred had already sprouted, waiting to take root and break out of the soil. Anner didn't care. She was a warrior. Even if she died, she would go to heaven. She would never go to hell. The iron door was locked again. Anner looked down at the blood outside the iron door. It was Ieguli's blood. Bah! Spitting on the red blood, Anner walked to Kariaji, who had tripped and hadn't got up yet. Soon, the girls who were locked in the house again heard screams from outside. They ignored it and just held Ieguli in pain. Outside, Anner found that Kariaji was dead. Kariaji's face was pale and his eyes were wide open. He died with horror. She didn't scream because of Kariaji's death. What really made her scream was Yichien, who had run away but stood in front of her again. Yichien did not keep running forward. She was not at a disadvantage in terms of speed. In addition, there were many turns in the village. After turning a corner, she jumped onto the top of the wall and lay on her stomach. She waited for the people chasing her to run forward with flashlights before she came down. A total of 6 figures passed by. The Jistin girl who humiliated Ieguli was missing. Yichien didn't go to find his comrades immediately. He returned to the original place with the gun. He saw a figure moving with a flashlight in the dim starlight. He approached and said, "Hey." The figure turned around. The dazzling light of the flashlight swept across her eyes. Anner, who was scared for a moment, screamed. She wanted to shout, but Yichien didn't give her a chance. The scream and the gunshot sounded almost at the same time. Bang! The bullet entered Anner's body at the closest distance. Gunshots rang out outside the house. The Kaistan girls who were locked up in the house hugged Ieguli, who was still warm. They were not afraid of the gunshots. The girls of Kaistan were not afraid. They were dead. Another criminal's body appeared outside the house. Yichien, with a cold face, stood beside Anner, who was still breathing. He took the key to lock the iron door and the same replica AK rifle from Anner's hand. The closed iron door opened again. The Kistan girls in the room did not turn their heads. Even if they were to die now, they had nothing to be afraid of. Yichien rushed in and whispered to the motionless girls, "Let's go." Anner, who was shot in the heart, flicks her fingers slightly. Her eyes lose focus, and she blinks slightly. She sees someone running past her. It seems to be. Anner closes her eyes and stops breathing. The pitch-black night hid countless murderous intents and filth, giving birth to countless sins. Before dawn arrived, the murderous intents, filth, and sins would erupt until they were all cleaned up. Chapter 4501. Bang Bang. Bang Bang. Unable to catch up with Yichien, the Jestin extremists who had lost their target fired 3 shots into the sky to warn their accomplices. The originally calm night was now in chaos. Weaving Sparrow and Bahi pressed their ears against the iron door, holding their breaths as they listened to the chaos outside. Gunshots, footsteps, and roars. It seemed like they were chasing something. The 2 people who were leaning against the door exchanged a look. Something happened outside. Probably on Qing Miao's side. Weaving Sparrow said in a low voice that only Bahi could hear. If it's really on Qing Miao's side, we won't be able to hold our ground for long. Prepare early. Bai nodded and looked back at the Jestin villagers who were all alarmed. His gaze fell on a corner, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Weaving Sparrow's gaze swept to the same corner almost at the same time. She said softly and coldly. We have to find the criminals here. I'm a little suspicious. She glanced at the corner and said, be careful. If there's really a problem, even if they're Jestin villagers, we have to deal with them directly. The last sentence was a little cruel, but he was slightly relieved. He also suspected this couple, and so did his comrade. Both of them had the same intuition, so the possibility was more than half. It was getting more and more chaotic outside. They couldn't find Yi Qian, and when they returned, they found Anner and Kariaji dead. The girls who were originally imprisoned had all escaped. Their escape made the Jestin extremists completely furious. Catch that Chinese woman and kill her. You must kill her. Don't let her go. She must not have run far. You must find her. Don't let her escape back to China. Search, search, search. In a small village on the border of Jestin, where there was insufficient electricity, countless flashlights flashed across the night sky. G3, who was crawling on the hillside around the village, put away his binoculars and slowly slid down. 3 hours ago, the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces secretly entered Jestin and silently killed nearly 15 Jestin outlaws on the front line. They arrived near the village 5 minutes ago and just happened to hear Yi Qian's gunshot at Anner. G3 slid down the slope and said to Xia Jinyuan, Qing Niao and the other two are probably already on the move. The gunshots are a little chaotic. Han Zheng stared at the GPS and frowned. He said uncertainly, the GPS doesn't move. It's hard to tell. Xia Jinyuan glanced at the stationary GPS and climbed up the hillside like a cheetah. He raised his night vision binoculars to observe. 5 minutes ago, there were countless beams of light flashing in the dark village. Judging from the number of extremists running around, Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes and quickly slid down the slope. A fierce battle had just ended last night, and in less than 24 hours, the Special Forces would face another fierce battle. It was also the first time that the trainees of the second battle went overseas to fight. Seal all the entrances and exits of the village. Block all the escape routes. The rest of the people will take advantage of the chaos to sneak in. Kill whoever you see. Robbing a burning house will be more effective, and we can quickly determine who is a bandit and who is a citizen. He paused for a moment and said to the trainees who had a faint smell of blood, we veterans are better at cutting throats from the back. If we go in now, we can clean up everything along the way. You guys did a good job last night. I'll leave the deep cleaning to you tonight. What do you think? The trainees who had carried out 2 missions in a row all nodded, indicating that there was no problem. A trainee raised his question. We are now fighting in another country. Q King, aren't you worried that our whereabouts will be exposed and the border of Jestin will be alerted? Chapter 4502. Xia Jinyuan said calmly, turn on the high power screen. All wireless signals within a 10-kilometer radius are blocked, including satellite signals. Also, our troops are guarding all the entrances and exits of the village. Not even a fly can fly out. You've also changed your rifles. All the bullets are NATO-made. Other than your camouflage uniforms, you can't find any evidence that you're Chinese soldiers. Do you think you'll be exposed with such a deployment? Since they were sneaking into another country to carry out a rescue mission, they naturally had to disguise themselves well. Z7 Han Zheng said, there's no problem on my side. I've already turned on the high-power coverage. All satellite signals have been intercepted. I'll guard an opening. Not even a mosquito can fly out from under my nose. If one comes out, I'll kill one. If a pair comes out, I'll kill a pair. No one can escape from under my nose. Z7, who was buried in his work, smiled and said ruthlessly. G3 smiled and said to the trainees, there won't be any problems here. You just need to think about returning home alive. You've trained for more than 2 years and performed well last night. You'll definitely be able to return home alive. Don't worry and take care of those people who still want to destroy the peace of our country. T6, who had been talking to the university students with a smile all the way, changed his temperament when he said those ruthless words. He wasn't a university student. He was clearly a laughing llama. Sniper E6 looked at the veterans and then at the trainees. He said slowly, I'll guard an opening. With one word, The bastards inside won't be able to escape. E6 was a man from the northwest. He was very good at flying helicopters. His eyebrows were very thick. There was a scar at the end of his left eyebrow. Not only did this not destroy the heroic spirit of his thick eyebrows, but it also added a hint of unruly handsomeness. Huddled in a corner, he suddenly spoke, causing the heart of the Special Forces trainee who was closest to him to tighten. As a sniper, E6 wasn't used to talking too much outside. Once he didn't speak, he was even more invisible than K7, who also didn't talk much. Basically, if he didn't speak, no one would notice that there was such a person beside him. The highest level of concealment for a sniper was about his level. Therefore, when he suddenly spoke, the trainee was so scared that his heart skipped a beat. E6 saw that the trainee closest to him, who was about to become his comrade, was shocked. He even apologized in embarrassment. "Sorry, I suddenly wanted to express my opinion. I couldn't help it." "Oh, okay, it's fine." The intern soldier did not expect this and did not know how to respond for a moment. He replied dryly and looked a little embarrassed. E6's facial features belonged to the ordinary category. His lines were well-defined, and he leaned toward the category of a tough guy. He had the typical bravery of a man from the Northwest who was not afraid of death. After he finished speaking, he hid in the shadows again, his entire being merged with the mountains and rocks, making the trainee's heart tighten again. The veterans in the team were all awesome people. When they arrived at the battle deployment area, Xia Jinyuan divided the 13 veterans into different teams. 4 veterans would guard several entrances, while the rest would enter the village and find a commanding height to guard. 30 new recruits entered the village in Kyrgyzstan. After completing this foreign mission, they would become real special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. There were dogs in the village, and the barking of the dogs added a bit of tension to the already restless village. A few dark alleys swept out from the ravines, heading towards the village at the fastest speed. The veterans of the Snowfield Brigade were the first to move out, followed by the trainees. This time, they did not open the way with rifles like last night. Instead, they used pistols with silencers and combat daggers to open the way. It was better to be low-key when sneaking into another country to fight. They chose to engage in close combat, and at the same time, the danger level rose sharply. There was no guarantee that there would be a sneak attack from behind. Chapter 45:03. This was the first time the trainees went abroad for a mission. They had brushed shoulders with death several times last night. Although they had some experience, it would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous and afraid when faced with an overseas mission where they were likely to die. Nervousness and fear were the most normal reactions in the face of danger. No one could escape from them. What they had to do was to overcome their nervousness and fear and complete every mission with the most fearless attitude. The night was not calm. Footsteps were everywhere, indicating that this small village in Jestin was destined to not be peaceful. GK and Baihe, who were still imprisoned, also knew what was happening outside. As expected, Qing Miao escaped with 5 Jestin girls. It was definitely not a problem for one person to escape, but it was difficult to escape with 5 girls. They had to go out to support Qing Miao. Baihe whispered her plan to the middle-aged Jestin man who helped them escape. At the same time, she also told him her suspicions. However, the Jestin man was so scared that he clutched his chest and exclaimed, "No, no. How is it possible? Did you suspect wrongly?" There was the sound of someone falling to the ground outside. GK jumped up and pressed against the iron door. She raised her hand and knocked rhythmically. Yiqian heard the sound and immediately knocked back. They finally found the place. Bai said to the Jestin man who knew a little Chinese, "Then, can you let the 2 of them lead the way for us?" Yiqian, who received a response from her comrades, dragged the guard to the side. She didn't waste any time since she couldn't find the key. She first picked up the guard's imitation rifle and slung the rifle she had previously snatched over her shoulder. Then, she aimed the rifle at the iron door. Bang! 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 3 bullets hit the iron lock and sparks flew. Since it was already chaotic, why not make it more chaotic? The village was so big. With their skills, they could definitely escape. The iron lock fell, and the iron door was kicked open by Yi Qian. At the same time, she threw the rifle inside. Be gentle, be gentle. It almost hit my head. GK came out and caught the black shadow. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and immediately reached out to grab it. Otherwise, she would have been hit by the gun. It was a little embarrassing for someone who played with guns all day to be hit by a gun. The villagers inside were all shocked by the scene before them. A Chinese girl came in with a gun. Was the chaos outside because of this Chinese girl? It was too sudden. Everyone was stunned. The couple who had been huddling in the corner and grieving for their children raised their heads, as if they could not believe what was happening in front of them. The middle-aged man from Kaisten, who could speak Mandarin, immediately shouted at the 4 Chinese border herdsmen, "Run, run, run. Follow them. They could run now. Hurry up and run." The further they ran, the better. They must not look back. At this moment, the couple in the corner looked at each other. As if they had thought of something, they suddenly stood up and rushed over while crying loudly. Yi Qian and Weaving Sparrow didn't understand what the couple was crying about, but the White Crane did. He secretly exchanged glances with the middle-aged man from Jeston. The couple cried and said that they wanted to leave together. They wanted to go out and find their children. They begged Weaving Sparrow and the others to take them with them. "Take them with you. Take them with you. It'll help them escape faster. Shamask can run faster with them. They can escape together." Chapter 4504. The begging of the couple softened the hearts of the other villagers. They felt that they could indeed escape together. They even thought that if they were accidentally caught, the Shamask couple would be able to stand up and stop the violence outside. At this point, Weaving Sparrow and White Crane were completely certain that their suspicions were not wrong. The Shamask couple had already betrayed them. Weaving Sparrow said to Yi Qian, who did not know the situation, "There's something wrong with the two of them. They sneaked in to instigate a rebellion. Then bring them along." Hearing this, Yi Qian did not hesitate and directly said to White Crane, "Bring them along. We'll deal with them outside." Fortunately, he held back and did not immediately say that he had saved a few Geeston girls. So cruel. Weaving Sparrow laughed, her laughter containing the same cruelty. White Crane raised her eyebrows. Every time she worked with Qing Niao, it was very satisfying. Qing Niao on the battlefield did not have the sensibility of women. What she had was all rationality. She could even distinguish the pros and cons better than the male soldiers. Bringing the Shamask couple was indeed a good idea. The middle-aged man from Geestan who could speak Chinese closed his eyes and nodded in agreement. If Shamask was really in cahoots with the people outside who had killed the villagers' relatives, then it was impossible to leave the couple in the village. No matter which country it was, the people of any country hated lawbreakers who destroyed peace. The villagers of Geestan also hated them. When the Shamask couple saw this, their eyes flashed, and they secretly smiled. They had invited the others to escape with them, but they had been rejected. "Go, take them away. Shamask, you have to take them away from here. Allah will bless you to leave safely." After making a decision, the middle-aged man from Geestan urged the 5 of them to leave quickly and reached out to push them out of the small house. "Follow them, don't look back. We'll be fine." Those guys still needed to stay in the village, so they would be fine. It was safer to stay here. The 5 of them were pushed out of the small house, leaving the Geeston villagers holding each other's hands tightly, using each other's strength to ease their tension. They will definitely leave, right? Allah will bless them to leave safely, right? The kind woman whispered, clasping her hands and praying. "This way go." In front, Shamask and his wife crouched as they led the way, urging the 3 people behind them to follow closely. They were not heading in the direction of Zongshinshin. The 3 of them had a strong sense of direction, so how could they not know the couple's intentions? They didn't expose them and allowed them to lead the way. How could one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Since Captain Xia and the others had already come over, they would attack from the outside while the 3 of them would attack from the inside. They would attack from the front and back and complete the cleanup. The bullets in the replica rifle had already been loaded and could be fired at any time. The three of them were dressed casually. Aside from the rifle in their hands, they had no other equipment. They didn't even have a bulletproof vest. They had to rely on their courage to penetrate deep into the enemy's camp. Shamask and his wife saw that the three people behind them were obediently following them. Their strides became bigger and faster. The three of them had guns in their hands, but the two of them didn't. They had to hand it over to the leader as soon as possible. Amidst the twists and turns, Yichien suddenly saw a black streak pass by his left side. It was so fast that he couldn't tell which comrade it was. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.